against Russia. It's another odd, interesting, maybe much welcome position from the US president. He's issued a 50-day ultimatum to Putin, threatening 100% tariffs if Russia fails to agree on a peace deal. This is a big old story going on over there. What does it do in terms of changing the dimensions of that war? And Hamleys, the toy store, has named Barbie, Rubik's Cube and Lego among their top toys of all time to celebrate 260 years of iconic play. With over 1 billion Barbies sold, 500 million Rubik's Cube, these timeless classics continue to shape generations. But what is number one at the top of your list? Putting Etch-a-Sketch out of the equation, I think we can say. Details on the way. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk 0344 499 1000. Will net zero save the world? Wow, there's a question. We touched on this, of course, yesterday, and since then Red Ed has announced the big sweetener for those hell-bent on trading their gas-guzzling car, earth-polluting vehicles into silky smooth and super clean electric cars. That's the idea. The net zero secretary has dug deep into his pockets and produced a wad of cash for those who actually care about the future of the planet. The rest of you will burn in hell for your green-based crimes. You make Ed sick. It's as simple as that. So with that in mind, he's handing over £3,700 so you can go out and save the planet. What a nice man he is. And this, of course, comes on the back of his other latest initiative. The government has published its solar roadmap. It outlines how the UK government plans to deliver 47 gigawatts of solar energy by 2030. Wow, Ed Miliband is Jesus. This is all part of the Clean Power Plan. The roadmap outlines several action points that estimates could save families of around about £500 a year on their energy bills. When and how, we don't know. Doesn't matter. Every possible home panelled up and sucking in those rays to make life cleaner. And this comes on the back of another initiative. Yes, just days ago, Ed Miliband, now surely the Western world's archdeacon of global salvation, unveiled plans to make it easier for homeowners to stick a windmill on their roof. Yes, wind turbines in your own house, your gardens, the shed, wherever, all part of a mass expansion of the green agenda. He announced a consultation on relaxing planning rules governing the construction of turbines on residential and commercial properties. This man is unbelievable. He's the flipping messiah. So you have it. You've got the car, you've got the solar panels, and you've got the windmills. You are oven ready to save the world. Will net zero do it? 0344 499 1000. But here's just a slight, and I don't want to put a dampener on good old Ed's, ingenuity and his amazing foresight and his ability to go where no one else has gone before. But I don't think it's unreasonable to ask the question, what difference does this all make? I mean, considering the sheer amount of money, the effort, the initiatives, the policy announcements, the life-changing directives, you might think that we would kind of know the answer to that. What difference is this going to make? And I'm not the only one wondering about this, because yesterday in Parliament, the Reform UK MP asked this very question. Let's have a listen to Lee Anderson laying out a very simple request on that issue of net zero. Here he is.
The statement from the Energy Secretary sounded like a desperate attempt to save his own job. But he's right. The British people do need protecting. They need protecting from the Energy Secretary, because businesses that I visit every single week say that his madcap ideas are killing growth, killing business and killing jobs. But I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt if he can answer one simple question, which he's already refused to answer. By how much will the Earth's temperature be reduced by if the UK became net zero tomorrow? Simple question.
So there it is. I mean, that's not just a simple question. It's a really important question. By how much will the Earth's temperature reduce by when we go net zero? Now, I think that's a completely, actually, it's a crucial component to this, bearing in mind, as I said a second ago, the efforts, the money, the policy changes, the life-changing directives. That is exactly the question an MP should be asking. And you would imagine, if you are given the heady title of Energy Secretary, Net Zero Secretary, the head honcho of all things green, you would have an answer to that. So let's have a listen then to Ed Miliband responding to Lee Anderson.
And the answer, which he just doesn't want to accept, is this. If he just listens, the answer is this. I believe in British leadership. I believe in Britain's ability to make a difference. And the truth is, when we, as I said in my statement, when we passed the Climate Change Act, 60 countries followed. When we legislated for net zero, many other countries followed. He talks Britain down. I believe in Britain.
And the answer, well, no, there was no answer, mate. I mean, you literally didn't answer. You began your answer by saying, and the answer, if he cares to listen, and then proceeded to not give an answer. That's not a political point. That isn't some bit of mischief on my part or anybody else's. He literally did. He was asked a very straightforward question, laying out a very simple request. How much will the Earth's temperatures reduce by going net zero? And the answer, there's no flipping answer, mate. You didn't give an answer. I think if we're being asked to monumentally and fundamentally change the way we do business and life, and there are costs, billions involved in all of this, we are talking about an £800 billion net zero agenda. You might just think, I mean, call me, I'm not being pedantic here. This is not a scoring exercise. You might think if you are shoveling 800 billion quid's worth of taxpayers' money into an initiative, you would at least be able to belch out a fairly reasonable, coherent and unequivocal answer to what difference that is going to make. It's kind of up there as about as important as it could be. With that in mind, we're asking the... You might be able to supply me with the answer. Ed Miliband didn't have the answer. Maybe you've got the answer. And if there is an answer, if they say, OK, yeah, if you got rid of all man-made stuff, there'll be a difference. And what difference will it be? And how long will it take? Are we talking about... So we go net zero, so what, in 15 years, the planet changes its rising temperatures? Is that what happens? Or is it 300 years? I don't know. What is the answer? And the answer, if he cares to listen, and then I won't give an answer. But this is nuts. The bloke's an absolute bozo. What's happening here? 0344 499 1000. Will net zero save the world? And other associated comments you might have in that direction as well. Let's get a word from Simon Danczuk, former Labour MP, now member of Reform UK. Simon, good afternoon to you.
Good to be with you.
Always good to have you on. So the Net Zero Minister, Ed Miliband, blasting those criticising his environmental policies. He's saying they're anti-science, anti-jobs, anti-energy security, anti-future generations. Sounds like the right way to get people on his side, right? Let's have a listen to Ed Miliband again in action in the Commons yesterday.
The damage caused by climate impacts in a near 3 Celsius world is forecast to cut our GDP by 8%. by the early 2070s, which will be roughly £200 billion based on current GDP. Mr. Speaker, these are uncomfortable, sobering facts. And we should make no mistake. We must act on the climate and nature crisis to protect our British way of life, because no sector or part of our society is immune from these risks.
But he can't tell us, Simon, how much the temperatures will go down by. Curious, eh?
Absolutely. The truth is, Ed Miliband is an extremist, and Keir Starmer has put him at the very centre of the government. They are playing North London Labour parlour games with the British economy. That's the truth of the matter. As the Office for Budget Responsibility has said, his proposals, his policies are going to cost Britain £800 billion by 2050. That's the cost of it to the British economy, to the British people. And, you know, there's no substance to what he's saying. He says he's talking in facts, but these aren't the facts at all. 200 billion off GDP, but it's costing us 800 billion according to an independent body that is there to assess government policy. Yeah. This is an absolute disaster. The solution to this is for international, for countries to come together internationally and find a solution. And the reason he can't give an answer to how much his policies will affect climate change is because it will be exceptionally little unless China and other countries in the world change what they're doing. That's the reality of it. It's virtue signalling to those people that he dines with in North London and elsewhere. That's what it is. He's an extremist, and it's costing us dearly. It's very bad news.
And he's surrounded by the old Corbyn advisors as well in that department. So he's got the, exactly the kind of people he wants on side. And it seems that Starmer it reminds me a little bit about when Tony Blair and Gordon Brown and Blair left Brown to it largely. He didn't get involved in the Treasury, which is a bit mysterious as the Prime Minister. And now you have a situation where Starmer seems to have just said, do your own thing, Ed, whatever you need to do, as much money as you need. We won't ask any questions. You do what you need to. But he can't answer the very simple question that Lee Anderson put to him yesterday, which was by how much will temperatures reduce as a result of these initiatives? And that's not a mischievous question. That's not somebody point scoring. That's a genuine, intelligent question that you would imagine the Energy Secretary would have an instant answer to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you raise a really interesting point about the Labour politics within the cabinet here. Bear in mind that Ed Miliband is one of the few, if not the only one, to have any experience of doing government. He's been in government previously, before they won the general election. And so he's very smart at playing the political game within Whitehall. And to his credit, I mean, if you follow his agenda and support his agenda, then you might be pleased with what he's doing. But he's pulling all the correct levers, whereas other cabinet ministers just aren't as experienced in doing politics. And you're exactly right. Starmer's letting him get on with it. Disastrous for the country, I have to say. One of the points he made yesterday is that Britain has got one of the most nature depleted countries in the world, and he's putting solar panels all over the countryside. The wind turbines are killing thousands upon thousands of birds. If anybody's affecting nature, it's his policies.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a curious, almost a trail of contradiction throughout this whole story, and very little answers. And this would be fine if it was just a little vanity project that wasn't costing anything. You could go, all right, let Ed get on with it. He's experimenting with a few ideas. But 800 billion quid is an awful lot of money, and much of that is coming from the taxpayer, of course. Let's move to this story. Donald Trump, interesting kind of turn of events. He's been sort of fairly neutral on Ukraine and Russia. There's moments when he has a right old pop at Zelensky. We all remember the Oval Office moment where he gave him a dusting down along with J.D. Vance. Zelensky's never going to forget that moment either, and it seemed to be very sort of pro-Putin. Many people thought that was a bit mysterious, and others said, no, that's the way to go. And now he's kind of sort of changed all that this time. He's now talking about new weapons, a plan which would involve sending long-range missiles over to Ukraine, could result in major disruption in the war against Russia by stunting Vladimir Putin's overnight assaults. Let's have a listen to Donald Trump speaking in the Oval Office yesterday.
I am very disappointed with President Putin, and I thought he was somebody that meant what he said, and he'll talk so beautifully and then he'll bomb people at night. We don't like that.
Yeah, that's obviously not the Oval Office, Simon, unless they've changed the decor in there to include a runway.
No, absolutely. But the interesting thing, I know many people in Britain are not enthusiastic about Donald Trump, but to his credit, he does aim for peace internationally. I mean, he puts effort in to trying to get peace wherever that might be, in the DRC in Africa, or here, in terms of Ukraine and Russia. He has put some effort into it, and it does sound like Putin has overplayed his hand. He's sort of trying to take advantage of Donald Trump, who's been trying to negotiate a peace, whilst continuing to bomb the hell out of Ukraine. And it looks like Donald Trump's had enough, and he's shipping these long-range missiles out to Ukraine, which will have a devastating impact on Russia. There's no doubt about that.
100%, and he's talking about this happening via NATO as well, so individual countries will be doing their bit too. So it's a big effort, and then if he doesn't solve it in 50 days, or if Putin doesn't solve the war in 50 days, there's 100% tariffs coming their way. But I mean, Putin's not the kind of bloke that just goes, fair point, OK, you've got me in a pincer movement, the war ends. He's not going to do that, is he?
It doesn't sound like it, does it? But there's no doubt that Trump is going to try and help bring it to a conclusion. Yeah. These missiles fire from Ukraine right into the center of Russia. They go for hundreds of miles. They will be destroying all the drone factories that Putin has established to bomb Ukraine. So they're going to have a massive impact, both psychologically and literally, in terms of combating the offensive from Russia itself.
Let's move to this story. Breaking in the last sort of 90 minutes or so. Extraordinary story. There's a fair amount of complexities to this, but basically a leak, a British military data leak exposing 100,000 Afghans to Taliban risk, essentially looking like a kill list. Operation Rubithic spent £7 billion addressing the fallout, including covert evacuations and a prolonged super injunction to suppress the breach. And the Times has done a lot of good work journalistically on this, I know. But, I mean, this sounds like all shades of disturbing. It's been known for a few years. Nobody said anything. Nobody could report on anything. But we have the detail today, Simon.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. As you say, the Times have done a great job in bringing this to light, and it all focuses on a military operative within the UK accidentally leaking this list of Afghanis who presumably were helpful to the UK and to the West at a certain period of time. That got leaked by accident, I think, in February 2022. Governments have had a super injunction on that being reported. As you say, 100,000 Afghanis at risk. But now we're spending £7 billion bringing many of them to settle in the UK because they are vulnerable. It does feel to me, and it's still early days in terms of this whole story, it feels to me like we're doing far too much to sort of deal with the issue. Yeah. I know these people are at risk, but we can't accommodate everybody all the time.
Indeed, and where this story goes, I don't know. But it's interesting that when this came out, it was just after Ben Wallace left or when this was known to the government, was just around about the time that Ben Wallace left the Conservative front bench as Defence Secretary. Now, I don't know whether there's a connection to that, but, you know, I don't think it would be inaccurate to wonder.
No, I'm sure there's a lot more to learn. I mean, credit to John Healey, the Secretary of State for Defence now. He had an independent review done, which said, listen, lift the super injunction. Now what we're expecting is many of those that are on the kill list, as it's been called, are now going to take legal action against the United government, against our government. And sue us for costs, which amounts to around 250 million quid.
Yeah, a lot of money involved in this, and a lot of lives, it seems, have been compromised. Simon, stay with us. We're going to talk more to Simon Danchuk in just a few moments' time. 0344 499 1000. Will net zero save the world? I'm not being facetious by asking that question. Lee Anderson tried to get an answer, really, to saving the world yesterday in Parliament on the back of all of the announcements that Ed Miliband has given. And we've had many, from solar panels on every roof and windmills in your back garden, 3,700 quid to buy a sweetener to go and buy a brand new electric car. It might cost you 30 grand in the first place. I mean, I just don't see, with a cost of living crisis, everyone, I think people who've got a few quid might go for it, but I don't know about everybody else. 0344 499 1000. We'll have more comment from you on the way. More voices to come on this one as well. Just gone 20 past 1. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. We have Simon Danchuk with us, the Reform UK member, long-time parliamentarian. Speaking, of course, on the big issues of the day, Simon, we'd be failing not to mention the latest instalment of the junior doctors' strike. They've now changed their own name to resident doctors, of course, we know that much. And some earning over 100,000 quid a year, but still going on strike. Let's have a listen to the Health Secretary. This is Wes Streeting speaking and giving us an update on the latest.
What I want the BMA to recognise is that their whole dispute has been about pay. That's why the government has moved and given them a 28.9% pay increase. They can't just dismiss that or forget that. That's come at considerable cost to the taxpayer. And also, it's the highest pay award in the entire public sector. So we've got to be fair to other staff in the NHS and beyond. But there's still lots of things we can do and want to do together to improve the conditions that resident doctors are working under, to improve their career progression.
I mean, it seems to me, Simon, Wes Streeting's being entirely reasonable here.
Oh, incredibly reasonable. I think they've been very well looked after. A 29% pay increase, and they're still going back out on strike. They've had the highest public sector pay increases for the last 2 consecutive years. They can now earn over £100,000 a year if they do a bit of overtime of a weekend. I mean, you know, what's this about? And this is coming from taxpayers. That's who they're trying to get the money off. It's not government money, it's our money.
Correct.
That they're trying to get it from. The irony is, though, I have to say, is that you've got Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, Labour Health Secretary, quite rightly making the points that he did there. But at the same time, you've got Angela Rayner introducing employment legislation that will make it even easier for people like the junior doctors to take strike action. I mean, this is totally unjoined up government. We don't need people to be able to take easier strike action. We want them to stop taking strike action. That's not Angela Rayner's agenda at all.
100%. And I mean, this could just end up in another strike when this one is settled, because there'll be, as you rightly say, a little bit more wiggle room and legal right to take those strikes with, you know, almost less criteria involved to make it happen. Let's move to this story then. Over 1 million migrants are claiming universal credit in Britain. Yes, I'll have to laugh, otherwise you'll start crying and screaming and we'll all be howling at the moon on this one, Simon. 1.26 million migrants claiming universal credit, 737 of them, nearly 737,000 I should say, unemployed, 510,000 in some form of work. EU nationals form the largest group of claimants, followed by non-EU nationals with indefinite leave. So it's an interesting picture. You sort of scratch your head and wonder how we get to these figures and how anybody is in a situation where they're not British but they're in this country claiming universal credit and also not working.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's outrageous. This is one of the strongest stories today, and the British people are quite rightly furious about it, I believe. You've got 6.6 million people, British people, claiming universal credit, and then you've got 1.26 million people, foreign nationals, immigrants, claiming universal credit. That's a very big proportion of the total that are claiming universal credit, totally disproportionate. And so that means that we are literally importing benefit claimants. This is people coming into Britain and just claiming benefits. You know, the people who argue for more immigration say that it boosts our economy, that it improves GDP. This proves completely that it doesn't. I mean, there's no excuse for this, and it needs sorting out big time.
Well, I mean, we're not talking about people who are refugees or those on humanitarian visas. They form some of those figures, around about 172,000, and we can have a specific discussion on that. But you've got more than 800,000 others who, what? I mean, there's a question mark here. Surely, if you've come from, whether you've come from France, whether you've come from Eritrea, wherever it happens to be, it doesn't matter if you're here and this isn't your country of origin, you're not escaping something, why would you be claiming benefit? Why would you even be allowed to?
Yeah, well, we've allowed a lot of Europeans to remain here after Brexit, so they will be foreign nationals, and they could well be claiming. But it's the disproportionate nature of it, isn't it? It's the percentages that just don't make sense. So British people, we have 6 million claiming, but over 1 million people are foreign nationals. And it's people swinging the lead. That's what we used to call it. This is people taking a mickey out of the system. And not least because of the pandemic, the same sort of checks just aren't being done on benefit claimants, and it quickly goes around a community. How do you exploit the system? How do you take advantage of the benefits system? And that's exactly what's being done. Let's have some reality around this. People are swinging the lead on this issue, and it's costing us taxpayers an absolute fortune.
It's unbelievable, to coin a phrase. Listen, Simon, we've hit the clock, but always good to have you on. Thank you for your time. Simon Danchuk with us. He's a former Labour MP, of course, now a Reform UK member. Couple of voices as well coming up on the will net zero save the world? I mean, that is, you have to ask that question, bearing in mind the urgency, the sheer eye-watering amounts of money involved, the jaw-dropping changes of policy and how we live. But will it save the world? I mean, that's ultimately what we are told this is about. I think having some meat on the bones is not too much to ask. Baroness Natalie Bennett will join us. Rupert Darwell, author of Green Tyranny, is on the list as well. And, of course, most important to anything we do on this show and any other show on Talk is your comments. 0344 499 1000. You can message 87222. And, of course, if you want to leave a voice note, bypass the queue. No problem with that at all. Again, same number, 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
So much comment coming through on the question of net zero. Will it save the world? That is Ed Miliband's kind of contention, that is what he's putting on the line. His climate plan claims that global warming could cause £200 billion worth of damage by 2070, but the Office for Budget Responsibility estimates the cost of reaching net zero will hit £800 billion by 2050, with most of that lost in fuel tax. Andrew Bowie, who's the Shadow Energy Secretary, has called Labour's whole approach shrill and out of touch. Let's have a listen, though, when the Reform UK member, Lee Anderson, asked a very simple question to Ed Miliband about the results of net zero and what it's likely to lead to. Let's have a listen to Mr. Anderson speaking in the Commons yesterday.
The statement from the Energy Secretary sounded like a desperate attempt to save his own job. But he's right. The British people do need protecting. They need protecting from the Energy Secretary, because businesses that I visit every single week say that his madcap ideas are killing growth, killing business and killing jobs. But I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt if he can answer one simple question, which he's already refused to answer. By how much will the Earth's temperature be reduced by if the UK became net zero tomorrow? Simple question.
Now, wherever you sit on this argument, that does sound like a simple question. How much will it reduce temperatures? Let's have a listen to the Secretary of State's answer. Again, Ed Miliband, House of Commons, yesterday.
And the answer, which he just doesn't want to accept, is this. If he just listens, the answer is this. I believe in British leadership. I believe in Britain's ability to make a difference. And the truth is, when we, as I said in my statement, when we passed the Climate Change Act, 60 countries followed. When we legislated for net zero, many other countries followed. He talks Britain down. I believe in Britain.
He believes in Britain, he says. In a moment, we'll speak to Rupert Darwell, the author of Green Tyranny. But first, former Green Party leader, Baroness Natalie Bennett, joins us. Natalie, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. It's lovely to be with you.
Always nice to have you on. Maybe you can answer that question that Ed Miliband couldn't answer about temperatures. Can you shine some light on that for us, Natalie?
Well, I think that Ed was absolutely right in saying that British leadership does matter. We get a huge amount of global media attention around the world. People see what we're doing. People see if we're making a success of things. That, of course, is opportunities for British businesses, British jobs, for people to follow and buy our technology, follow our lead. But I think more than that, it's a point, what I would add that Ed didn't say is the world has to slash its carbon emissions. The UK is part of the world. And the question you started is, will net zero save the world? Well, will net zero save British lives? And if we take the heat wave that everyone went through, the first one, we're now up to 3 already this summer. In June, 600 extra deaths attributed to that heat wave. We've got the threat of flooding. We've seen in America, we might have Trump in America and his allies denying the reality of climate change. And then we've got the horrific, tragic floods in Texas, which are the reality. The climate, the physics don't listen to the rhetoric of people like Reform MPs or even the US president. It reacts to the physics, and we have to slash our carbon emissions. But that's also a huge opportunity for us to build a different, healthier society. So how much will Earth's temperatures reduce by? Well, what we're talking about is a global system, and that is a system which requires everyone to change. Yeah, so no, I get that. And it'd be part of the whole change. Of course, we've got to make change. I understand that notion, but how much will the temperatures reduce by if we're going net zero? Well, I think that's focusing on a question that is relevant. It's a hypothetical question. Well, it's not hypothetical, is it? Because we're told how much it's rising by, and the impossibility that if it hits over this 1.5 or goes further, then the damage becomes irreversible. We've heard a lot about that, and I think what Lee Anderson was saying. Let's assume it didn't come from Lee Anderson, because oddly, I had this question in my head before I even realised Mr. Anderson had asked that question in Parliament yesterday. What difference is it going to make? It's not unreasonable to say to the Energy Secretary or to somebody like yourself as a Green Party member, if we do everything that's in this package, solar panels, windmills, electric cars, insulation, goodness knows what else, fantastic if all that works, then how much is it going to reduce temperatures by? Well, if we do everything in this package, and I would have to stress that I don't agree with everything the government's talking about. I think carbon capture and storage is an absolute myth, and new nuclear is far too slow for the timescale we need, incredibly expensive and unreliable, uncertain whether it'll actually deliver at all. So, this is not the package that the Green Party would go for. Sure. But what we're talking about is also we would be going for community energy, local energy schemes. Yep. So we'd see huge advances to there's no need to question why to do this. These are things that we're doing for the benefit of the British people, for the health of the British people, for the well-being of the British people. I get it. And the Green Party have been the most consistent party on this, no doubt about it. So under your measures then, different to Ed's, how much would global temperatures reduce? Well, what we would do is we would meet our measures. We would ensure that we do meet our targets, and it's worth stressing that the government at the moment is actually not meeting its own targets. Its own independent committee on climate change says 2/5 of the promised cuts by 2030 are risky, or there's no plans to do them at all. You look at the National Energy Systems Operator, which has said there's great plans for decarbonising the electricity sector. And the government's not on track of those. But it is worth stressing, this is not a cost, this is a gain, because the cheapest energy that we can possibly have is onshore wind and solar. And if everyone has a solar panel on their roof, great expanses of factories, schools have solar panels, etc.
I'm 100%. Listen, you might find this interesting. I'm 100% with you. If we can get cleaner energy that's cheaper to produce, it's cheaper on bills, it saves householders, and it's good for the planet, what is not to like? What I'm intrigued by, Natalie, is how much will it reduce temperatures by implementing all of those policies?
Well, what we're doing is we're doing our part, which the whole world has to do together. So it's not possible to separate out one country and say this is just it, because other countries, to varying degrees...
There must be a ballpark figure across similar
now
countries across the world, France, Germany and all those, Australia, all the countries that are chipping into the same idea. What is the aim? To reduce global temperatures by how much?
Well, what we wanted to do, we set a target in Paris in 2015 to keep below 1.5. We're now very dangerously close. We have, in some years, exceeded that. But what matters is every 0.1 of a degree makes a difference to people's lives, to people's survival. I think in the UK, it's a great time to be talking about this, because the number of days in which the temperature is over 10 degrees C over the average is quadrupled, is up 4 times in the last 10 years. That's the number of days that are 5 degrees over the average is doubled. It's 8% sunnier. Now, it's very easy for lots of people to say, oh, isn't it great it's sunny? But if we're going to actually ensure that we get food supplies, our farmers now are absolutely desperate. They're gasping for water. The fields are drying out. People may be able to pick out that my accent comes from Australia originally. And I increasingly walk on British fields and British land. And the grass cracks under your feet and the soil just crumbles to dust in a way that's typical of Australia, but has not been typical of Britain. This is an emergency.
That's kind of the summer, though, isn't it? It's what happens in the summer, doesn't it? My lawn looks like, it's a crime scene, frankly, in terms of nature, because it's the summer. In the winter, as it moves into a little more watery season, it goes green again. It's just sunshine, Natalie, isn't it? You said that 600 or was it 800 Brits have died in the last couple of weeks. Do you have any evidence for that?
Yeah, those are figures based on the actual calculations, the expert figures. That was 600 in the first heat wave at the end of June. We've had two heat waves since then. Right. People haven't calculated the figures on those yet, but there will be more.
Where do they come from, those figures? I've not heard of 600 people dying because it was sunny in the summer.
Well, anyone who's listening to this can Google 600 deaths. Heat wave, and you will.
Well, yeah, but you're a senior Green Party member, Natalie. You would know that, surely, off the top of your head, like that. 600 people have died. Does anyone know these people, or is this a statistical construct that you're using?
No, it's just like we have a huge problem with winter deaths, which is, I've spent most of my morning talking about housing, and we have a huge problem with the quality of our housing. And, this is a problem in terms of heat waves too, is we have not built housing that's designed to have the ventilation, to have the cooling that's needed. So all of these things are actually talking about saving people's lives, about improving lives and communities, creating business opportunities. These are things that, why should we be doing this? These are things that we need to be taking the climate action that's also the action for healthy societies, for healthy communities. What we're doing now is really not working. We need to do things differently.
Natalie Bennett, thank you for your time. She is, of course, the former leader of the Green Party, with us here on Talk. I think there was 2 out of 2 areas. I didn't really get an answer. There's 600 deaths? I don't know. There's a woman down her road, loves a sunbathe. I mean, she really does. She looks like she's a completely different colour, even in the winter. She's still very much alive. So I don't know whether these figures are borne out somewhere. Maybe there is a kind of mortuary list of those that died because it was summertime. Help me out on that if you can. And no specific answer to the temperature drop. which was the one I think we wanted to get to. Rupert Darwell, author of Green Tyranny, is also with us. Afternoon to you, Rupert. You're a very level-headed man. I don't know if you were able to hear much of that chat with Natalie Bennett. I didn't do too well on that question. I think I went 5 times on the temperature one. Still didn't get an answer. Do you know?
I think that's what they call a car crash interview, isn't it, Ian?
Yeah, it was in that ballpark, wasn't it?
I thought her answer, the first part of her answer was incredibly revealing when she said this is about global media attention, because that is absolutely right. It's about British politicians preening themselves on the global stage, saying we are climate green virtue people. This is what we're inflicting on our country. Aren't we wonderful people? That's absolutely what it's about.
And I also said, you're absolutely bang on as well on that. I mean, I've sensed this about Ed Miliband for a long time, and those that are this evangelical about these projects. And, you know, if Ed Miliband can't answer a simple question in Parliament, that Lee Anderson completely reasonably... I know Lee can be a bit mischievous and all the rest of it, but just parking that to one side, it was a perfectly legit question. I put the same question to Natalie Bennett. These are the people that are the most vocal about this. You know, we're all going to die. We're terrible, terrible people. We've done all sorts of irreparable damage to the planet, etc., but aren't able to actually give us any kind of, not even a clue, as to what all of these initiatives collectively are likely to do.
Well, Ed Miliband in the Commons said it was about British leadership and the number of countries that have followed Britain after the passage of the Climate Change Act in 2008. So here's some real numbers that Ed Miliband and Natalie Bennett won't give you. Between 2008 and 2019, Britain cut its carbon emissions by 180 million tonnes. We cut our emissions by 1/3. The rest of the world increased their emissions by 5,170,000,000 tonnes.
Wow.
And that's an increase of 16%. So for every 140 days, our emissions cuts, 11 years of emission cuts, were wiped out by the increase in the rest of the world's emissions.
So we're not likely to make much of a dent, I suppose, is the upshot of all
140 days dent. That's all it is. And that is a huge... The British people are paying an enormous sacrifice for this puny pinprick virtue signalling of 140 days worth of emissions cuts.
Maybe it's the sunshine. That's the issue, isn't it, after all? Because she did tell us apparently 800 people have died just in the first heat wave, which lasted for about 4 days.
Yeah, and what she did allude to, and quite correctly, is that British housing stock is old, it's very drafty, it's very difficult to insulate, and that's why winter deaths are far more of a problem than summer deaths.
Yeah, and of course, I mentioned that phrase statistical construct, which is something that people rely on a lot in politics, where you take a sort of notional, hypothetical group. Similar thing happens with air pollution, as you will be more than aware on this one, Rupert, where, you know, there's not actual people involved in the death. It's just if you added up all of the amount of deaths and said, well, Roger sadly died at 97, technically 45 minutes before he would have done, compared to another patient, you add all that together and you somehow spout out this figure of hundreds of people are dead.
Yeah, as you say, Ian, these are all modelled numbers, and you cannot trust what they're telling you. And the fact that they have to rely on these very highly spurious, bogus methodologies tells you that this is a manufactured crisis. It's entirely synthetic.
Where do we go with this? Because we were talking in the office, trying to give the government the benefit of the doubt on this, Rupert, and saying, look, you know, there's so much money and time invested in the net zero project. I mean, it's off the scale. This is like an industrial revolution, I suppose. It's got an equivalence there in terms of the seismic nature of what is being implemented, what is being asked of us and what it is costing us. There must be some reason behind it. And we talked at the beginning about the sort of virtual signalling nature of politicians, and that's a large chunk of it. I mean, is there anything in the data that says we're all wrong on this, Rupert, and the government are onto something? They just want to make the planet better.
No, I mean, what you've got to understand, this is green ideology, and I would actually say it's an anti-industrial revolution, because the Greens, if you know anything about the Greens and environmentalism, they were against industrialization. So Natalie comes from a party and from a stream of thinking which thinks growth is bad, that consumption is bad, and we need to save the planet by having limits to growth, by stopping the economy growing. And that's essentially what this does. What the net zero does, it raises costs, it makes people poorer, and it sucks growth out of the economy. So no, there are numbers that show that this is happening. There is nothing to justify what the government's doing. The reason it's doing it is partly ideological. It's also, there's been huge policy capture by green vested interests, and do not underestimate that impact.
Yeah, spot on. Listen, Rupert, great to have you on. Thank you. Telling it like it is, Rupert Darwell, author of Green Tyranny. Your responses to the two voices you heard. Thank you to Archibald on Twitter. I can't read out what Archibald said, but it made me chuckle. One here from Frank, who says £16,000 to install solar panels on my house roof to save £100 a year. Do the maths. Your thoughts on this? Ed Miliband, Natalie Bennett, the whole green agenda. Will net zero save the world? Lines are open. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A couple of messages coming in. Paul in Preston. Surely to cut CO2, more trees need to be planted as they are the lungs of the earth. They also prevent floods. However, it appears to be okay to cut down X number of miles worth of trees for a toad, so it's easier to get to the G4 summit meetings. Oh yes, yeah, you're right. That's where they decided to cut the trees down to build a motorway. Somewhere in South America, wasn't it? Brazil? Just cut the trees down to build a motorway to get to the climate change summit. You can't make it up. Scott says, how difficult is it for these loonies to simply say, we don't know? But it needs to be done to bring temperatures down. All I hear is waffle, waffle and more bloody waffle, says Scott in Dorset. You're absolutely spot on. Let's talk to Matt in Cheshire. What's going on, Matt? Afternoon to you.
Hi, good afternoon, Ian. Great interview and great persistence there.
Well, I stayed calm. I thought I've done this for years, and the one thing you mustn't do is get angry. So I stayed calm and thought I've got her on side, and she's going to now spew the evidence. But sadly, as you heard, Matt, it never came.
No, it was exemplary and just sort of really cool. Just, oh God, is that it? Is that all you're giving me? Well, what's the point in that then?
I mean, she's about as senior a voice in the Green Party as it gets. They want to run the country.
Of course. I look like I've been to Brazil. I was painting last week. It's now raining here. It's been raining since 10 o'clock this morning.
Same here. Raining me back. I just put my shirts out to dry as well, Matt, as well. What about that?
It's weather. You know, it happens. And just think, the great Simon Danchuk and Ed Miliband were not long ago in the same party.
It's incredible, isn't it? And Ed Miliband, of course, was once obviously trying to be the Prime Minister of the party and doing his utmost to showcase his kind of middle-of-the-road credentials. But once he was a noted failure at becoming the leader, he did what so many do. He ran for the left-wing hills and has remained there ever since. He's got a marquee up there with all of Corbyn's advisors in it.
That's brilliant, Ian. You just led me straight on to my next comment. What we have to remember is that many Corbynites are trained in deceit and are professional lunatics using Orwellian doublespeak to con the public. He's also likely to be on commission from the Chinese and the likes of Dale Vince to carry on plugging heat pumps and solar panels, and he'll get a kickback when he retires. He doesn't believe that. Esther McVey asked the same questions. He completely ignored her like she was talking in a different language. The far left are, after all, traitors and are more than likely to benefit from conning the British public out of lots and lots of money without any guilt whatsoever.
Well, you have to, I mean, the basic rule of thumb. By the way, Dale Vince is anti-heat pumps and anti-carbon capture as well, which is interesting. So they're not all quite on the same page. However, the one thing that does unite so many on the left is that to have a left-wing brain, you have to believe that your position is a superior one. And to have that position, you have to find an enemy. And they've tried to find enemies in other political parties. Doesn't really work because they get exposed. What greater enemy could there be than telling the world that the planet is about to die? Because it's all about finding that position of self-flagellation and man's ineptitude and damage and injustice. And that way you can get out of bed in the morning and say, I care. It's all about believing you have a greater ability to care than your opponents.
Yeah, and it's also an easy way to scare and indoctrinate young people into thinking that if they do the wrong thing or they don't live the right way, that means they've got them on the hook from an early age. But what Ed Miliband says the other day just proves that when the indoctrinated are losing the argument, they ramp up the fear and the outright lunacy. They start panicking and sort of say, we're all going to die. It happened with Brexit.
Oh, there's no end to it. It's just the same with, I mean, Black Lives Matter was another good example of bizarre, wonky left-wing thinking where if you listen to, if you consider the leaps that have been made in racial equality, fighting racism and goodness knows what else in this country alone. And yet half those Black Lives Matter people were happy to go on national TV, programmes like this telling us that the UK is no better than South Africa in 1960 or Mississippi in 1970 or Tottenham in 1980. I mean, it was peculiar because what happens is as things begin to get settled or sorted, you ramp it up again and you tell more lies, and you do so with a straight face. Funny times. Matt, thank you very much indeed. Don't go away. Peter in Watford with you shortly. Loads more comment coming in. Kerry in Melksham says, please make it clear that nothing we do will save the planet. The planet is quite capable of looking after itself and will be here for a little while after we are all dust. Bang on. Thank you for that. Lots more to come. 0344 499 1000. First, though, let's get the latest news headlines at 2 o'clock right here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yeah, welcome to the home of common sense. Lots to get through. We're talking about Ed Miliband, accused of running a shrill scare campaign to silence critics of his £800 billion net zero agenda. I mean, this is an awful lot of money. He warns that $200 billion climate damage will be caused by 2070. However, Andrew Bowie for the opposition and Kemi Badenoch, his boss, slam his plans as unrealistic and a threat to British workers and economic stability. More on that story and more comment coming in from you. Will net zero save the world? Also this afternoon, Donald Trump has vowed to send patriotic missiles and advanced weapons to Ukraine, calling them game changers in the fight against Russia. The US president has issued a 50-day ultimatum to Putin, threatening 100% tariffs if Russia fails to agree on a peace deal. This is big news, and some might say a rather interesting turn and change of mood from the US president. And on a lighter note, thank the Lord, Hamleys the toy store has named Barbie, Rubik's Cube and Lego among their top toys of all time to celebrate 265 years of iconic play. With over 1 billion Barbies sold, 500 million Rubik's Cube, these timeless classics continue to shape generations. And in a world of screens, isn't that just nice to know? We'll have more on that story too. Everything you need to know. We'll have all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. Theo Usherwood is with us, the political journalist and commentator. I'm just tempted. I want to save the lighter stuff to the end, really, right. Theo. But I'm so tempted to ask you one quick question first. I reckon you can do the Rubik's Cube.
I can't. I tell you who could. My little boy
You can't.
could do
I've been
them.
given false information.
My
Keep in touch, Theo.
my little boy can do them.
Can he?
He can do them really quickly. Yeah, he can do. Yeah, I've seen him do it. Yeah, I don't know. There's a method or whatever. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, my little boy can't. He follows an app which tells you take a
to do it.
picture of the cube. Have you seen that?
No.
You literally, have you seen that, Finn? I mean, apps do everything now. So you literally just show the cube where it's at.
And you
And
have to
then
do
the app
something-
just goes, and he goes, right. Finn used to peel the stickers off. But that's just, you can't do that at speed, though, can you? You can't impress somebody. I'll be back in half an hour.
But have you seen there's a documentary, I think it's on one of the platforms, and there's the guys do it in they do 2 in 1 hand. They can do it with their blindfolds. They can do it in.
Yeah.
They can look at the cube.
I don't believe
and then they can do it with the cube.
Yeah, I know. I've seen
5 seconds looking at the cube, and then they'll do it in however many seconds. It's
I think they're
to watch.
scam artists, frankly. I think it's like up there with David Copperfield and Siegfried and Roy. I think it's an illusion.
Fantastic.
Because the speed of it is like...
Speed cubers.
Like,
yes,
no, how's that even possible?
I think the fastest, I think they sort of do it when they have competition, they do it sort of 2 or 3 seconds.
I think it takes a certain kind of brain. My little boy, as I say, can't do it. A mate of his can do it, and impressively quickly.
Right.
You think, hang on, you're 10.
I'm too old to learn new skills.
No, a friend in the family did that thing. He was so determined at about 50 to learn how to do the Rubik's
I'd
Cube
rather learn golf
that he
something,
taught himself online to do it. He said, I've got literally no skills. This was at a wedding, and he went, and somebody went out to a shop at the reception and bought a Rubik's Cube to prove it. And he didn't do it at speed, but he did it, and quite fairly quickly.
Right.
Anyway, there are more pressing matters, Theo, that we must be getting on with.
I'm going to spend the next week learning how to do Rubik's Cube, and the next time I come to see you, then I will have mastered it.
Well, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll come back to the toy question at the very end of this, because there's a couple of other bits to it as well. Let's start with Ed Miliband, a very serious man, of course. He's been accused of scaremongering a campaign against net zero skeptics. I thought he had an appalling day in Parliament, and I say this because genuinely I thought Lee Anderson's question to him about, can you tell us then, as a result of all these initiatives, what it's going to do to temperatures? And he said, I'll answer that, said Ed Miliband, and then didn't answer that. Now, I think that's a reasonable question in this debate.
Perfectly reasonable.
Almost the question.
Because many of your viewers will want to know if they're going to take the hit in terms of seeing their energy bills go up to pay for green measures, the levies that go onto their energy bills, the taxes that are raised from filling up their cars. They'll want to know that there is a result. What is that result? If they're going to, obviously more money for the Treasury, but what is the result, and more money for the energy companies, but what is the result, what is the promised land? What are we getting as what's the net benefit? And of course, the reason that Ed Miliband can't come out and give a definitive answer is because it's negligible, right? And he just doesn't want to say that quite a bit out loud. And that's because, the overall carbon emissions from this country contribute to 1% of all global carbon emissions. Everybody can see that climate change is having an effect. I had a bloke round to look at doing up my house a couple of months back, right? And I said, and we were looking at how much it was going to cost and when the project was going to happen, and we were saying obviously it can't happen over the winter because it will rain, it will be windy, it will be bad weather. And he goes, no, don't worry. In the last few years, we've been able to do it because the weather.
The summers are longer.
The summers are longer, and the winters are much more temperate.
Yeah.
So everybody can see that the climate is changing. It's getting warmer. The weathers are getting. Yeah. We're also seeing more extreme weather. But what people dispute, and where Ed Miliband is wrong, and where he's got to drop this overzealous approach to it, is the answer isn't just to go, well, net zero. You're going to have to pay more on your energy bills. You're going to have more to fill up your car. You're going to have to pay. What I really disputed and thought was damaging, strategically damaging. It's just my opinion, right? But where I think he's going to fall down is he's got to bring people with him. To be sceptical about net zero, or to be sceptical about anything, is, that the government says, does not make you lumped in with the anti-vax brigade. It doesn't lump you in with the anti-science brigade.
That's the problem.
It's so combative, and I know I'm speaking to people who work in the sector and they work alongside government, and actually what they're trying to persuade ministers to do is to persuade people of the arguments for installing heat pumps, for installing solar panels. But if you're accusing everybody who puts their hands up and asks a question of being a swivel-eyed loon, for the want of a better expression, then you're going to immediately create an enemy. I don't get the political logic that Ed Miliband is deploying here. I've seen we heard what he said. We've seen the quotes in black and white, and I know that Labour want to take on reform, but actually, what Labour need to do is they need to win back voters who might be persuaded by Lee Anderson.
That's it, and nobody, there's no one denies the climate is changing. Everyone knows that because you can see it, you can feel it. It's all around us, and of course the climate changes lots. The question, of course, is this anthropogenic kind of component. Is it man-made and all the rest of it? And if you cleared the entire world or the planet of all oil-producing capability and every car that runs on petrol or diesel, would we suddenly see the seasons going back to where they were when we were kids? And the answer is probably not, because we're completely removing the possibility that the climate will always change.
But there's also there's nothing that any of us can do in this country to make that happen. Nothing that we could do in this country to stop China deindustrialising or India deindustrialising or America or Brazil. There's nothing. And of course, we rely heavily on the products that these economies are producing. We saw the effect of what happened when Trump threatened to, and of course there's a sort of impasse now, and it's going to be okay with China. But how heavily we rely on China for goods imported to this country. If we suddenly say, well, we're going to pave across your ability, for want of a better expression, to produce those goods, because we're going to insist that, just imagine this utopian Ed Miliband world where China actually comes into line with our way of thinking around climate change and net zero, and it suddenly subscribes to it. What impact would that have on the global economy? It'd be catastrophic. And so rather than just blaming people that don't subscribe to the view on net zero, I would have thought it far more sensible to try and persuade people that be honest with people, just be straightforward, like it's not going to have that much of an effect. But actually, if you do implement some small changes, it can have a beneficial effect on a fairly basic level. For instance, and I know I'm going to put my head above the parapet with this one, but I was speaking to somebody who worked very senior in Transport for London, and I get why people don't like Sadiq Khan. I understand it. But he was talking to me about the ULEZ. And what ULEZ eventually boiled down to was, do you want to buy a 2015 diesel car? Do you want the right to buy a 2015 diesel car? And so what happened was that actually this debate just became, the Tories lost the argument and they lost the mayoral election last summer, because actually by taking out old diesel engines and extremely old petrol engines, the climate in London is demonstrably better than what it would be and it would be demonstrably better in 10 years' time compared to what it would be if we allowed those vehicles to continue to operate. And there are those who are affected by it, and there are those who are being hit in the pocket because of this change. But rather than actually try and make the argument about it, Labour have just gone in head first against people who are trying to do the right thing and just hitting them with costs. And it's a really damaging way of approaching it.
It's a very damaging, and the curious thing about what they did with ULEZ is that they were trying to hit something like, it was less than 10% of drivers that they were trying to go for. So there's one of the questions that comes up, not unreasonably, is where else would you get away with spending hundreds of millions of pounds on a web of cameras in order to catch 8.2% of drivers?
The real danger with ULEZ is coming later, by the way, because they're going to increase the demands, and so you put in the infrastructure of cameras,
and then they'll lower it.
Exactly, and you can keep on raising taxes that way. And that I disagree with.
That's true, but also organically those cars will disappear anyway. So there's that too, and it wasn't, as you rightly say, it wasn't very well sold, and nobody really takes a step back and says you've got an entire city covered with a wall of cameras around the M25. They are clocking you on your number plate for the time you travel, regardless of your car, because of congestion charging, which is a joke in itself. And they're also clocking you on whether you're driving the wrong kind of car. I mean, that in itself, I mean, the amount of CCTV and observation involved is breathtaking and some would say disturbing. Somebody said to me ages ago, the thing with the whole net zero thing, there's sort of three different groups of people in this. There's one group of people that say, actually, I mean, there used to be a group in America, I think they were called Republicans for Green Initiatives or something. They just saw this as a business opportunity, right? We can make loads more money. Here's a new industry, if you like. On the back of that is the second group, which simply say the world needs, sounds a bit conspiratorial, we need stuff to invent. We've kind of run out of stuff, you know, we don't need things. We need a sort of industrial revolution. We just almost like start again in order to keep maintaining infrastructure, transportation and jobs. And the third are the left-wingers, the sort of ultra-left-wingers who believe we're all going to die and it's our duty to save the planet and all the rest of it. So, and it doesn't matter which one of those three you are, but you're invariably in one of those groups.
Yeah, and there's a reality to the situation, and that left-wing group, Ian, sees it in terms of we're all going to die and the world's going to fall to bits. But these are real people's jobs that are being affected by this complete sort of religion around net zero. Yeah. I mean, I was speaking to watched a speech from a union leader, a very left-wing union leader, but not of the sort of Corbynista types, you know, up in, or you know, and certainly not subscribed to the Ed Miliband view. You know, he was saying, you know, his members are being, you know, pulled off oil rigs, and at 20 years in the future, we're going to build some wind turbines. Those are real jobs in the North Sea, paying real salaries, proper skilled salaries, and keeping food on the table of millions of, you know, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of families. And to suddenly say, well, we're going to embark on this particular project with no consultation, just a forward-looking view of this is the way it has to be, rather than actually saying, hang on a second, can we, where's the overlap? Where is the bit that's going to safeguard those jobs at the same time? There is value in the North Sea. There is still oil to be drilled in the North Sea. And for those jobs and for those people who work on the oil rigs and are you know, have a material interest in actually their livelihoods depend on those, I'd have thought you know, I don't understand why the government has just embarked on this sort of utopian future that in reality has no chance of ever being realised.
Let's move to Esther McVey. Interesting one for her in the Commons yesterday, because she asked the Deputy Speaker what she can do to encourage ministers to actually answer questions. Now, it's not unusual to say we've all been there. I said we've all been there. If you do this for a living, PMQs, and does the Prime Minister, what percentage of questions get directly answered as opposed to kind of taken off on a tangent, etc. I mentioned Ed Miliband yesterday when was quite unequivocal by saying, I'll answer, and then didn't answer a very simple question. Let's have a listen. Esther McVey yesterday in the House of Commons on ministers' inability to answer a straight question.
Madam Deputy Speaker, we are elected to this House to hold the executive to account and ask questions on behalf of our constituents. The Right Honourable Member for Doncaster North, in common with many ministers, is treating this House and our constituents with contempt by not even attempting to answer the questions that is asked of them, probably because those answers would be embarrassing to them. There is getting to be very little point asking ministers questions at the dispatch box. What can you do as Deputy Speaker to encourage ministers to actually answer the questions that are asked of them?
I thank the Honourable Lady for prior notice of that point of order. I trust and understand that she has notified the Right Honourable Member for Doncaster North. She has indeed. Ministers are responsible for their answers, not the Chair, but the point has been made and no doubt been heard, the point that's been made by the Right Honourable Member, and the Treasury front bench will no doubt relay that back.
So there it is. Yeah, we've heard the question. We're going to relay it back, and it'll make absolutely no difference at all.
The hypocrisy, because Labour, you know, when they're in opposition, we're always saying, you know, you've got to answer the question. The ministers, you know, Conservative ministers aren't, you know, respecting Parliament, respecting MPs, because they're not coming in and answering the question. And Esther McVey called it out from Labour yesterday. I mean, you watched Ed Miliband in the Commons, and he wasn't, really straightforward questions, and he wasn't saying, and there is an option, it's worth bearing in mind, there is an option rather than just bluster with this thing. A minister, it is within their gift to say, I don't know, and I'm going to get somebody from my department
100%.
to write to you.
Why don't we hear that more?
Because they don't want to commitment themselves.
Yeah.
And actually, if you're gonna go through the process of coming to the House of Commons and making a statement as a Secretary of State, then at least come with the answers to back it up. We had another situation a couple of weeks ago, didn't we, when they couldn't, the ministers couldn't say how many gangs had been smashed as part of Keir Starmer's promise. Just say exactly what you've done. And if you don't know, it's within their gift to go back to their department, sit at their desk and send an email to the permanent secretary or somebody below the permanent secretary in the department and say, I've been asked this by an MP. I said in the House of Commons I'll give that MP a decent answer, and please can you provide me the details, and then I'm going to write to that MP with a proper answer to the question, and then if the MP in question wants to put that in the public domain, then they can do it, and it's on the record, rather than just obfuscating and delaying and dithering and just trying to bluster their way through it. And I just, Parliament. I say this as somebody who's been in politics. It has an important role to play, and when you have performances like that, MPs, ministers are just making a mockery of it.
Final one, back where we began. Hamleys' childhood favourite toys.
Go on.
So we've got top 10 Play-Doh. Everyone liked the smell of Play-Doh, didn't they, as a kid? I'm curious that plasticine couldn't manage that.
They put salt in it to stop people eating it, didn't they?
Yeah, I think they did. Snakes and Ladders, number 9. It's a kind of weird game. Marbles at number 8, invented in the 1840s.
Yeah.
Is marbles still a thing? The Furby, Tamagotchi. At number 4, Monopoly.
Are these of all time? They're not right now?
Well, I think it's Hamleys kind of have decided on what they think is on this list, so I don't know what the science is behind compiling it. Number 3, the Barbie doll. I don't think you would have had a Barbie.
No, didn't have a Barbie doll.
Yeah. Our Amy would have had a Barbie. She probably had a couple of them, didn't you, Amy? Yeah, still got them. She comes to
they
work.
Probably worth quite a lot of money.
Yeah, sits
if
next to
you've
her
got them in the box
with a little pair of headphones on. Tech-op Barbie. Number 2, Rubik's Cube, as we mentioned. 1974 that came out. I think I'm right in saying that the fellow that invented it didn't copyright it. So that's why there's just loads of moody ones out there.
Business fails.
Number 1, top of the list, Lego.
Lego.
Do you know when Lego was invented?
1960s.
58.
It's not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, talk about plastic.
I had loads of Lego. Absolutely tons of Lego.
But notice now, it's not about having loads of Lego bits, it's about the kits. So you make stuff.
I think what I had was I'd build something, then it would inevitably get dismantled. It would all go into one.
Or it gets dropped
Lego,
or broken.
Yeah, it goes into one Lego pot.
That's exactly
and
it.
that's where the fun starts.
What it should be.
Because it's what you can then build.
Yeah, that's what it should be. But now I get the idea that kids are just going, well, no, that's just every now and again. My little
With adults.
Yeah,
adults do it for mindfulness. I had a former colleague of mine, and he was just, he got fed up of scrolling on his phone, looking at Insta or whatever, and it was affecting his attention span, and it was just making him unhappy and nothing to watch on TV. And so in the evening he'd finish work and he'd go home and he'd build a massive Lego set.
It's brilliant.
I think he was into Star Wars, and then he got into the techno stuff, and it was just piecing it together. There we go, colouring out. I thought it was colouring in, but
well, colouring in is also an option apparently. Theo, thank you. Theo Ashwood with us on the programme. Over to you, 0344 499 1000.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Lee says, do you remember the board games with videos that had a timer, like Atmosphere? I never pooped myself so much when the guy came up on the screen with a challenge or a bit of danger. You've given me nightmares now. I remember talking to board games. There was, we're going to have to be careful here, because the minute you get into retro territory, it's game over for any other subject. I know this, having done it forever, this job. But Battleships was a great game. And then Computer Battleships came out. But you had to program all of your bits before you started the game, and then you pressed some numbers to guess your opponent's, you know, D4 or F6 or whatever, and you hope for an explosion. Blah, blah. But it took forever to set this thing. Remember, Mousetrap was another swine that took forever to set up and was over in about 13 seconds. Great when it happened, though, wasn't it? And the little thing came down on the mouse. It's brilliant. Who put their own hamster in one of those? Come on, fess up. This comes from Alison. There was a climate numpty on the other day who said, well, of course China and India don't have to take any similar actions on climate change because they're having their own industrial revolution, like the West did, and they should be allowed. An absolute farce, and all we're doing is enriching China, who are using slave labour, so no civilised country will ever compete. It's a really good point. Thank you, Alison, for that. I do hear that a lot. Well, we did it. They're just doing it. Actually, the truth of China is that they've got more solar panels and windmills than anywhere else on the planet. They just simultaneously happen to have more gas-guzzling chimneys, oil-powered coal fields, and God knows what else than anywhere else on the planet. Back to your calls. Paul is in Bolton. What have you got for us, Paul? Good afternoon.
Hi, Paul. Just calling regarding, obviously, the climate conversation we're having at the moment. And I noticed that the last couple of days there was an announcement by the government that they're going to invest 25 million on putting new signage so people can find places to charge their EVs.
Yes, that's right.
My reality is people who drive EVs are probably not Luddites, and I think they probably know where they're going to charge the car. So it's kind of a bit, you know, I understand on motorways, but that's going to be the case. But if you live in your neighbourhood, you're not going to know where to charge your car, or you've probably got a home charger. So that's 25 million.
True.
Another 65 million on grants for people to buy EVs. As I'm aware, that come 2030, we're all buying EVs. Why do we need a grant?
Yeah.
You know, and
I know.
Small amounts. And I did a quick bracket maths on the number of UK taxpayers, and it came out just about 40 million.
Yeah.
Works out about £2.50 a person, which is nothing. But why?
Why?
I don't get it. Why?
Why is the question. Leave it at that, Paul. It's a great point. It's the tyranny of whys. I want to get a quick word in from Charlie in East Sussex. Charlie, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Pleasure to talk to you again, as per usual, Ian. But
you too. Fire away.
Honestly, who on earth is running this country? Yeah. When you look at Ed Miliband, number one, he looks old. Number two, stumbling. Number three, he can't answer probably the most simple question that a man in his position should be able to just come back at Lee Anderson and say, right, it's this or it's that. You know, what on earth is going on with these people? Then you get that Green Party woman on, and she can't string a coherent sentence together, to be honest with you. She can't come up with any real facts, can't answer the questions you were asking, and we're formulating policy.
Based on these kind of minds.
Exactly, and this is so worrying. Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, I've got grandchildren, and I think to myself, what on earth have these kids got to look forward to when we've got people like this running the country that can't answer simple questions? And to be fair, you know, I know we all know Lee Anderson can be a bit, as you said earlier, mischievous, but what a simple question.
Very easy.
You know, and Ed Miliband, he really should have just come straight. He could have cut him off with a straight answer. Oh, it's this.
But he made or he could have given. He could have even said, "I'd have even accepted, Charlie, for him to go right, I can't give you a specific temperature, but I can tell you the pattern of what direction it's going in, and we are likely to end up in, or something like that. But what he did beforehand, he attempted to kind of caveat the question by saying, oh, no, mate, I'm going to give you a proper answer to this. So he even did that politician thing and then failed to give any kind of answer.
Well, it's crazy. I mean, since 1990, we've our emissions on like carbon have decreased by over 50%.
Yeah.
And do you know what? They just, and that's probably a good thing compared with where we were, 30, 35 years ago. But come on, give me a break. All the time we're pandering to this, and it really is a lunatic fringe now, but they've got so much power and there's so much vested interest. I mean, you just asked the multi-millionaire, what's his name, Vance. I mean, hey, come on. He's not going to give all that up, is he? So no wonder he's sponsoring it.
Listen, Charlie, you're a great caller as ever. Thank you very much indeed for that. That's Charlie in East Sussex. Gary makes this point, the source for the 600 death claim, which was something Natalie Bennett said on this show about an hour ago, that 600 people died this year as a result of the heat that we had for 3 or 4 days. I think she attributed it into this country, although there is some evidence that apparently that figure is global. But anyway, Gary says the source of the 600 deaths claims in an article in The Guardian, as Scylla would say, surprise, surprise, it's an estimate of people dying before their time due to not being accustomed to extreme heat. So a 95-year-old dying today rather than on Thursday because being on their last legs, they were struggling with the heat, is counted as a death caused by a heat wave. There are lies, there are damn lies, and then there are statistics, except these are not even statistics. Yeah, that's exactly how it works, and it's the same with those dying from contaminated air. It's 2,000 deaths attributed to that. There's not 2,000 people. It's a notional statistical construct based on, well, if X amount of blah, blah, blah. So you won't find the 2,000 people, and in the same way or a similar way, as Gary points out, somebody dies because they were very hot on that day, they couldn't cope with the heat, and they died. They were probably going to die on Friday anyway, but they died on Thursday, as it turned out. So it's a heat wave death, kids. It's that. I mean, the idea that fighting fit people, or even vaguely fit people, are dropping dead because we've had a bit of sunshine, which, by the way, has largely gone away, haven't you noticed? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Cliff in Berkshire says, my favourite, this is back to the Hamleys, the toy store, releasing the kind of big list of the Mutt's favoured games over the years. My favourite, Meccano. It's funny, when I was a kid, a mate had me. I'd never had Meccano. And it was metal, wasn't it? I think it still is. But there are, of course, moody plastic versions. Meccano, chess, model railways, and Ludo. I did like Tiddlywinks until I tiddled instead of winking. It's got to be said. Thank you, Cliff. Thank you, Cliff, for that. Ludo, I introduced my kids to Ludo the other day, only because we got a box somebody gave them at Christmas, and it had snakes and ladders and Ludo. They saw we went hand in hand, didn't they? Snakes and ladders. Finny, you familiar with Ludo? Yeah. And my kids loved it. It was such a simplistic thing. We haven't really played it much since, but it was weird because a lot of people don't know about the big Ludo secret. And it's such a simple thing. But brutal, you know, when you're taken at the last knockings and you're almost done a full circuit and you're downed by one of your opponents. Thank you, Cliff, for that. We'll have more where that came from shortly. And also this story, the BBC under fire. What, again? The BBC are under fire, of course. There's a bit of a backlash. The Gaza documentary, which breached accuracy guidelines by failing to disclose the narrator, was the son of a Hamas official. Adding to the turmoil, a damning review into MasterChef. The star Greg Wallace, up 45 complaints upheld against him, including allegations of inappropriate sexual language and unwelcome physical contact. There's also one that was upheld against John Turode as well, his co-host, of using a racial slur of some sort. We don't have any information as to what that is. He says he doesn't remember it. Let's speak to broadcaster and writer Michael Crick, a man who spent many, many years, decades even, Michael, around the block in news journalism, Channel 4, and of course joining the BBC after that. I mean, you've seen people come, you've seen people go. Turmoils happen from time to time. How are you rating the BBC at the moment? Are they up to their neck in it? Good afternoon.
Well, they've got it's not good. It's not good at all. But the BBC has gone through crises throughout its 100-year existence, you know, dating back to the general strike, and probably before the general strike, if only I knew the details. And it's, you know, and you've now got these three different issues coming together all in one, which is very unfortunate. But actually, I don't think the seriousness of these crises or these issues is as big, say, as the Hugh Edwards affair,
of course,
from a couple of years ago, which I think will have caused thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of people to start paying the license fee. And that has got to be a big consideration in all of this, because the Culture Secretary, Media Secretary, Lisa Nandy, said a few months ago that you know, it's impossible to enforce the license fee these days, and in those circumstances, if the BBC does things that people don't like or which offends people, then it can result in huge costs to the corporation.
Should the BBC be held to higher standards, Michael?
Well, slightly, because it is a public body, and we all have to pay for it in theory anyway through our license fees. And it's it's not a private institution where, for instance, if say ITN or ITV or News Corporation, which is ultimately your owners, if they lose lots of money, well, that's their problem. Whereas here you are talking about sort of public money in terms of the license fee. And so that is a consideration. And it is also, I suppose, it's one of the flagships of this country. I mean, a great flagship, in my view, renowned throughout the world. I mean, the BBC is highly respected throughout the world. And my worry is that in eating away at the corporation in this through these various different problems that they've had, some of which they could have prevented, it lessens people. It lessens not just the reputation and the finances. It will add to the long-term decline of one of our great institutions, which we should be immensely proud of, and that is sad.
It's kind of harder to defend, though, isn't it, the BBC? I was watching the Netflix 7/7 documentary that I started watching last night. Obviously, it's a very, it's a difficult watch, but, a very sound piece on what happened that day, involving all the big players from the head of MI5 to Tony Blair, etc., and of course the victims and those that were there. And I was looking at that thinking, well, it's obviously made by an independent company and sold to Netflix. It might have been offered to the BBC in that process, and who knows. But I mean, there was a time when you would kind of look at even fairly recently, you could look at the BBC and say, well, whatever failures there might be, it can still make programmes like this. It can still buy in programmes like this. Now, that's no longer the case, is it? Because if you look through Netflix or Disney or any of those big streaming services, they are now providing those kind of quality news documentaries that once upon a time were almost solely the domain of the BBC, and maybe Channel 4 thrown in there as well. But you take the point.
I do, and there is more competition from those new streaming services. On the other hand, the competition from, say, ITV is rather less than it was. I mean, when we were young men, ITV would be doing great documentaries with World in Action, and you had Weekend World and real serious journalism. And ITV, in terms of serious journalism, there's a lot less of it than there used to be. There's still some, of course, and ITN still does a valiant job with the news on ITV. So it comes and goes. And also, I think there's another issue here in that there are competitors, and there aren't just competitors in terms of yourself and GB News and other channels of various kinds these days, but I think there's also a more aggressive element from parts of the press, the Murdoch papers, the Mails, and I think some of these news services in dwelling on the BBC's problems, I'm constantly invited on to discuss them on programmes like this.
Indeed.
And I'll no doubt be doing so later tonight on a different channel.
I'm sure.
And so it does get more scrutiny from that point of view. I mean, there's no doubt about it. There are all sorts of aspects of the BBC which are really badly run, and which infuriate one. For instance, trying to get paid by the BBC is not always easy. But overall, it does a jolly good job, and it's one of those institutions we should all be proud of. Yeah. And if it was to disappear, we would be terribly, terribly sorry. And the really big problem the BBC's got to overcome is how do they find a way of replacing the licence fee and at the same time maintain not just the quality journalism, but the quality everything else, drama and sports coverage and nature programmes and Attenborough and so on.
You only need, of course, one or two of these kind of stories, though, to destabilise their defence in many respects, I suppose. And the one that really jumps out, I mean, the Hugh Edwards story, I think it seems to be a rehash of what does happen, where there was lots of rumour around the office. I hadn't specifically heard of that. I know a lot of people work in fairly senior positions in news, but I know Victoria Derbyshire had already been putting together, I think, some evidence with staff members that were concerned. So there's that, but the one of all the complaints against them, whether it's MasterChef or anything else, the Gaza documentary, the bit I find incredible about this, Michael, is, and you know what the BBC's like, they have a meeting of 16 people if they want to change the wallpaper, for goodness sake. And, BBC News is made up of some very skilled journalists, and you have been part of that team. I've worked at the BBC as well. The stages a documentary goes through from its original commissioning, which can take over a year in itself, and then when it's there, who's involved, what are the sources, how did it come together, who are the salient people that are on it? How did that get through all of those systems without somebody saying, oh, we should point out that the kid presenting it is actually the son of a man who's a member of a terrorist organisation?
Well, I think one of the problems that the BBC has had, and indeed all television companies, because we're all been pushed by the government for decades now to make more of our output from independents outside. And when that happens, you've got two different people who are in charge. There's the broadcaster, the BBC, and then there's the independent company, which can sometimes only be a handful of people who are making these independent programmes. And I suspect in this case that both sides, you know, there was something fell through the gap in the middle, and the people at the independent company. I mean, from the report, it seems that 3 people knew that the child narrator, the 13-year-old boy, his father was a deputy agriculture minister in the Hamas government, but they didn't think it was sort of suitable enough to pass on to the BBC. But equally, as the report says, it seems astonishing to me that nobody handling it at the BBC end said, well, who is this boy? I mean,
yeah, because he's very good. Yeah,
he's
good. He looks good on screen, and he's only a kid, and he can do.
He looks great on screen.
He can present stuff.
Yeah, but you would have thought somebody would say, well, hang on a moment. What's his links with Hamas?
Yep.
You know, family links. You know, for all you know, is it what else about his family links? We want to know more about him, and that should always be the question when you get somebody to come on and replace the normal reporting system where you get a staff member to do it. Well, obviously, you can't do that here because we're all banned from Gaza by the Israelis. So it's astonishing nobody asked that question. And
particularly on a subject that's already been very sensitive journalistically around this area. So
and what I think is you've seen in the BBC increasingly over the last 2 years since October the 7th is it's got more and more worried about Gaza and Israel, and a deluge of complaints from both sides, but particularly from the pro-Israeli government side, that it's in danger of not covering the whole issue as thoroughly as it should do, and as thoroughly as, say, Channel 4 News does, or ITV does in its use of and its coverage of the issue. And that is sad if people are sort of frozen into inaction, or they're frozen into a situation where they avoid trouble because they know it will lead to yet another deluge of complaints, and these have all got to be dealt with through processes and hearings and tribunals and lawyers and all of that. And frankly, it's easier to do something a bit simpler.
Final word, Michael Crick, on the high-paid star list has just been released by the BBC for 2024-2025. Yet again, Gary Lineker, I know he's about to walk the plank, but he's up there, number one, £1.354 million. Zoe Ball second, Alan Shearer, Greg James, and the list goes on. I do wonder about the Gary Lineker thing. I always thought, you know, putting the argument about whether he should tweet about things like race and politics, putting that aside, I've always thought he was a good front man for Match of the Day. I'm just struggling to work out how you end up with that kind of fee for presenting a late-night sports show, which does have a big cult following, not what it used to have. It does seem an extraordinary... I've done this job long enough, so have you, Michael, and that's a lot of money, even by lot of money standards.
Yes, I agree. And I'm sure... I mean, they would say, oh, well, it's the going rate for the job, and if we didn't pay him that, he would go off to Sky or ITV. And indeed, you know, some of the presenters do double up. And Mark Chapman works for Sky Sports as well as for the BBC, who's one of his Lineker's replacements. But... yeah, I think it is a bit hard. I mean, he is a very, very good presenter, and he's funny and self-deprecating, and obviously he knows his football, but commands huge authority. But whether he was worth quite the money that you say. But anyway, who am I to know? My pay at the level at the BBC was nowhere near even getting to the bottom.
I thought you were in another stratosphere, Michael, on that one. They just kept it quiet all those years. But there we are.
If only.
Listen, always a pleasure, Michael. Thank you, Michael Crick, the broadcaster and writer formerly of the BBC, Channel 4 before that, documentary maker, etc. Gary Lineker's number one on the list, 1.354 million. Zoe Ball, 515,000. Down slightly because she now does 1 day a week as opposed to 5. I mean, some of these characters, Zoe Ball, very good. Greg James, who I think is superb, 425,000. Fiona Bruce, 410. Nick Robinson, 410. Stephen Nolan, 405,000. And that's kind of interesting because Nolan does present most of the time on a regional station in Northern Ireland, of course, does national stuff at the weekend. Laura Koonsberg, 394 to 399,000. Vernon Kay, love a bit of Vern, 390,000. Justin Webb, here of the Today programme. I think he's still there, 365,000. Of course, these figures are not uncommon in the commercial world, but that's taxpayers' money in most of those occasions, and that does throw in another kind of question, doesn't it? And not a little irrelevant, inconvenient one, but a fairly compelling one. 0344 499 1000. Something they don't do on the Today programme, but it might liven it up a bit, is the Voice of Doom. I'd like to see Nick Robinson giving it that at 8:10 in the morning. We're doing the Voice of Doom next. It's the political mystery voice bit. It's been rested for a few days, but it's back in a moment. Can you guess who that voice is? We'll play you it in just a second, right here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Stuart in Perthshire. He says, Ian, you've got the best excuse to get yourself some Meccano now that you have a little boy. That's why men have kids, so that we can get another to go with the toys. There is something in that. I love, and I've got two of them, and they do like Lego, and one perhaps more than the other. I think Meccano would be, yeah, for my youngest, I think he'd quite like a drop of Meccano. We made a massive error a little while ago. It was with this in mind. So we bought the Black Panther Lego. Have you seen that beast, Finn? It's an expensive one. We did it as a Christmas present, but it's an 18 plus, as in building ability, not as like something weird about it. So it goes as an 18, and he was like 8. But the idea that I was always going to build it with him, he was going to do the thing, and this thing never got built, and not fully. It looks like it's fully built, and it stands there in the window, and it stood there for 3 years. It's the White Panther now. It's almost faded, this thing. That was an error, really, because he just lost a bit of interest. Not because it was too complicated, because I was doing the complex bit, but it's, yeah, with that big stuff. The Star Wars stuff is in another scale, like £700-800 for some of that stuff, and beyond, I think, for other Lego bits. We'll come back to Lego in a moment. I'll talk to Steve in Leeds in just a moment too. We've got the voice of doom. I think it's only day 2. Is that right, Amy? Day 2. So it's a newish voice. Remember, the only gig at your end is to guess or wonder, who is this?
Potholes and pavements.
I've even forgotten who it is, to be honest. I genuinely can't remember. Let's hear it again.
Potholes and pavements.
We played it last Friday, I think, for the first time. If you think you know, don't phone in. 87222 if you want to have a crack at it. One more listen.
Potholes and pavements.
Oh, that's going to run on forever, unless I give loads of clues, which I always end up doing. We'll tell you after the news at 3 if we get a right answer. If we don't, it just rolls over to tomorrow. 87222 if you can identify this voice.
Potholes and pavements.
Yeah, I can't remember who it is. I've genuinely forgotten. That's how hard it is. Even when you know, you don't know. Let's go to Steve in Leeds. Steve, how you doing?
Afternoon, Ian.
Afternoon.
Thank you, and you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, fire away.
Just a quick one. It's about Ed Miliband and his
Jesus
crusade on net zero. We're all being gaslit because it's well known that electric cars and these wind turbines, it takes far more carbon to produce them than they actually generate carbon free in the lifetime of the product. So, you know, and when you buy a car, it normally lasts 20-25 years. Well, if you work out the petrol that's used in the emissions over that 25 years, it works out less than an electric car for 10 years.
Because of the getting the battery together, all that's involved in that, transportation, the mining process, and then the destruction process, and on it goes.
Yeah, it's a bit like the mileage on electric cars. You know, they say it's 260 miles. Yeah, if you drive it around in a circle for 3 days at 27 miles an hour and don't turn anything on, it's a bit like the wind turbines. Oh no, they're carbon neutral if they run 24 hours a day at 30 miles an hour for 25 years. But they don't. And to me, you're better off going back to coal-fired power stations, because we use coal-fired power stations to make the things. Well, why don't we just use a coal-fired power station to generate the energy?
Well, yeah, I mean, what about the argument that at some point the oil runs out?
Yeah, the oil runs out, the coal runs out, the gas runs out, the world falls apart, because by then the population will be 20 billion people. What, we're all going to survive on a breath of wind and some sunshine?
That's apparently going to be it. Your solar panels, solar panels, Steve, that you're considering sticking on your roof are going to save the world.
Ian, there'll be that many people on the planet in 20 years' time. We'll need to walk around with them on his heads, holding up a wind turbine that's charged to a battery pack, because that's the only way they'll ever get any sun to us.
I love it.
That many people.
Solar panels on your hat. Surely someone's gone to Dragon's Den with that idea. Love it, Steve. Thank you very much indeed for that. Cliff says, when I was a lad, we were poor. One Christmas, my father gave me an empty shoebox and told me that it was an Action Man deserter. More dad jokes from Cliff. Love it. 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. We've got the voice of doom. Am I hopeful we'll get a right answer? Not sure. Who is this?
Potholes and pavements.
If you think you know, 87222. Back with more from you shortly. Right now, 3 o'clock. Let's get the latest news headlines.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, good afternoon. Welcome back to the home of Common Sense. Loads on the agenda here this afternoon. We are, of course, talking about Ed Miliband, accused of running a shrill scare campaign to silence critics of his £800 billion net zero agenda, while he warns of £200 billion climate damage by 2070. Andrew Bowie, who's his shadow, and Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the party, slam his plans as unrealistic and a threat to British workers and economic stability. Also this afternoon, a British military data leak has exposed 100,000 Afghans to Taliban threats, sparking fears of a deadly kill list. This is an extraordinary emerging story. The £7 billion Operation Rubific evacuated thousands, but a 2-year super injunction, which is why we've not been able to report on this, has drawn criticism for blocking public scrutiny and accountability. More on that in just a couple of moments. And Hamleys has named Barbie, Rubik's Cube and Lego among their top toys of all time. This is to celebrate 265 years of iconic play, with over 1 billion Barbies sold and 500 million Rubik's Cubes. These timeless classics continue to shape generations. We'll have more on that as well. One in from Matthew in Cheltenham, who says, I wish everybody would stop calling doctors junior doctors. They are trainee doctors. When I trained to be an airline pilot, I was not called a pilot until I was qualified to fly passengers. I was a trainee pilot, so let's call them what they are, trainees. And trainees do not and should not get paid the same as a qualified doctor, says Matthew. I've got a feeling, and correct me if I'm wrong, Matthew, I don't know what the specific, and they're not called junior doctors anymore, they're called resident doctors. I have a feeling they are qualified because some of them have been in the job for 10 or more years, but still retain that status. It's something, somebody will explain to us later, I'm sure. Is it about getting to the next stage of your qualification? So they are treating patients as qualified doctors, but haven't, moved into their specified field? How does that, somebody can tell us, I'm sure, in a nutshell, on a message 87222. Let's do the voice of doom. Have we got a correct answer? This is the voice we played you just before the news.
Potholes and pavements.
Who's that then? These are some of the guesses. Lillian Greenwood, no. Sarah Pochin, no. Liz Truss, no. Priti Patel, Yvette Cooper, Louise Hay, no. Diane Abbott, no. Dame Andrea Jenkins, no. Melanie On, no. Who's Melanie On? Labour MP, apparently. Since last year. Let's have a listen to the voice again.
Potholes and pavements.
And the answer, we haven't got. Nobody's got it right. Didn't think somebody would. I think that's a bit of a stinker, this one. But we'll give it a go, and we'll bring it back tomorrow for day 3 of the voice of doom. Couple of military stories out there at the moment, certainly one involving that issue around the database leak. We'll come to that shortly. And, of course, Donald Trump shipping long-range missiles to Ukraine, changing the face of war. He's vowed to send missiles and advanced weapons to Ukraine, calling them game changers in the fight against Russia, including this 50-day ultimatum that he's throwing towards Mr. Putin. If he doesn't meet that ultimatum, i.e. stop the war, he's threatening 100% tariffs. No peace deal, 100% tariffs. And that's as brutal as it gets. Experts say the new weapons could strike Moscow and ramp up pressure to stop the war. Let's have a little reminder then about what Trump said about Vladimir Putin just yesterday. Here he is.
We thought we had a deal. Numerous times I'd get home, I'd say, First Lady, I had the most wonderful talk with Vladimir. I think we're finished. And then I'll turn on the television, or she'll say to me one time, wow, that's strange because they just bombed a nursing home. I said, what? So we don't like that.
Yeah. So he waits for his wife to watch the telly in order to update him? I don't know. It is Trump, of course. Let's get a word on these stories from Hamish de Breton-Gordon, former British Army Colonel. Hamish, good afternoon to you.
Hi, good afternoon, Ian.
Trump never disappoints, does he? In a way, we sort of vaguely know, well, we don't really know the roadmap of Trump's mind, but what we do know is that he has an unconventional way of imparting very, very serious issues.
Well, absolutely. We're talking about, potential wars here, potential ceasefires, and referring to comments from the First Lady to make him make decisions. Well, if that's the way it works, then fine. But I think this is actually a very important day yesterday, and by Trump allowing some of those very special long-range missiles to go to Ukraine could make a difference. And I gather today there's a leaked report of his discussion with President Zelensky on the 4th of July, asking Zelensky whether he could hit Moscow. Where, of course, he can now. And not that that is going to happen, but I think the psychological impact of these weapons is huge. And the psychological impact on Putin, if Putin knows he's got to get up and speak on Russian TV of why American missiles have blown up key sites in Moscow, that might well change the game. Yeah. And added, as you say, to the tariffs, finally, Trump may be going in the right direction.
What was also interesting, I thought, Hamish, was that he was, when he was giving that press conference in the Oval Office, Mark Rutte, the head of NATO, was also at his side, and he also talked about supplying weapons to NATO. NATO countries, NATO members, in order to facilitate Ukraine as well. So is that a case of Trump sort of bringing everybody into the fold? So this looks like more of a global effort against Russia, as distinct from just America helping Ukraine.
Well, I think so. I think there's quite a wide element to this, but of course Trump was very careful to tell the public in America that they weren't paying a penny, and the Europeans were going to buy all these weapons and then give them to the Ukrainians. And that's fine. I mean, the war is much closer to us than it is the Americans. What the Ukrainians need is those sophisticated missiles, because we know after the attack on the Iranian nuclear power plants, these missiles are not affected by Russian air defense. And again, that's a key message going to Putin and his generals. Now that looks like Ukraine again get these missiles in numbers, they can have a real impact deep into Russia to cut supply lines, blow up ammunition dumps, etc., etc. And the final bit on this, Ian, is his army is pretty much at culminating point. It's pretty static at the moment, and if he starts to go backwards because of these missiles, hopefully that will bring him to the peace negotiation table quicker than anything else.
Yeah, although there's another part of me that can't imagine Putin just standing up and saying, yep, OK, Mr. President, I've heard what you've said. The war stops here.
No, you're right. I mean, I'm rather oversimplifying it, but the key facts are, 1 million Russian casualties, which has sort of been hidden from the Russian people.
Yeah.
If there are cruise missiles sort of going off in St. Petersburg and Moscow, that will not be able to be quietened down. The fact that the front lines are pretty static, it strikes me that along with the sanctions, if the sanctions come in 50 days, Putin will run out of money pretty quickly, and not even Putin can make bombs and bullets with no hard currency. Indeed.
It's interesting. I was watching a documentary yesterday on 7/7, telling the story of what happened and all of the implications and the politics and the security issues around it. And I'd forgotten this, but Tony Blair at the time was in Glen Eagles at the G20 summit when those horrendous terror attacks occurred. And they showed an image of all the G20 leaders there. George Bush was there. And, of course, Putin was there. And it jumped out at me from my screen, thinking, wow, it just seems so odd that Putin, a man who's largely ostracised now by the West, there he was, rubbing shoulders and just another tentacle of the 20 most powerful economies. Interesting change.
Well, absolutely. Those were in the early days of Putin's leadership, as it were. He, at the time, we all thought that he was somebody that we could do business with. He seemed to be more interested in doing deals, dare I say it, and commerce and finance. But actually, what we now know is he was building up the Russian economy and building up the Russian military, which is something we rather paid lip service to And, you know, recently, in the last 5 or so years, he's been telling everybody that he wants to recreate the old Soviet Union, USSR.
Yeah.
So we again sort of ignored that, and we're now paying the price for the massive peace dividend that we so overspend.
Well, we're going to watch with interest. The next few days will be revealing on this one. Be failing as well, Hamish, not to get a word from you on this extraordinary story just broken over the last 2 or 3 hours. British military data leak exposing the names and details of 100,000 Afghans to the Taliban, risking obviously huge fears. Creating what many have called a kill list. The operation looking at this has spent £7 billion addressing the fallout, including covert evacuations and prolonged super injunction, which is why we're only talking about this now. But it goes back a couple of years. 18,500 Afghans evacuated to the UK, 5,500 more planned, many, though, still affected and stranded. This is horrific.
Absolutely, and it sort of reminds us, as we're all talking about cyber attacks from Russia at the moment, you know, the power of the keyboard, presumably one misplaced key, and then we have this horrific situation. And I'm sure all my fellow Afghan veterans are as shocked as everybody else is in the country that so many people who fought so hard and closely with us are then exposed to danger. And of course, you know, we left it in a rush, not necessarily our fault, and left a lot of undone business there. And
do you think that was fundamental to a lot of the problems that have followed from this? You know, Biden, I think I'm right in saying, led the way on that, and the rest followed. And many people thought it hasn't been right since.
Without a shadow of a doubt, I think once you get into these sort of conflicts, you have got to be all in, and you have got to do it for the duration. And hopefully our current stock of politicians are really noting that. You can't just extract from a war as though you were finishing a game of football or a game of rugby. It's not that simple. You've got to do things right, and you've got to do all the preparation. Because this is people's lives at stake, and that unholy haste to get out of Afghanistan, you know, perpetuated by Biden and in a way Trump, and we just had to go along with it. And unfortunately, that, you know, in that hurry and in these sort of really difficult times, mistakes are made. And unfortunately, when you make mistakes in a military environment, that is when lives and people's livelihoods are really put at risk, and it's a salutary warning for the future. But we can't turn the clock back, and we must do right for the people who have been done wrong by this leak.
Indeed. Hamish, great to have you on. A great expert opinion as ever. Thank you, Hamish de Burton-Gordon, former British Army colonel. You can read his piece in The Telegraph that he's just recently put together on that issue, that data leak, and his views, as he said there, that hasty exit from Afghanistan that helped nothing at all. Couple of other bits of business. Graham in Bush, he says, both my children are doctors. This is reference to the status of resident doctors. Both my kids are doctors. After university, they are doctors. They do 2 foundation years, after which they get their full GMC, General Medical Council certificate. Then they decide which speciality they want to go in, whether it's GP or medical in the hospital. They are doing their training during this period before they are fully qualified, but they're still qualified doctors. My daughter had 7 years of speciality training as a junior doctor before she became a consultant. My son had 4 training before he became a GP, says Graham in Bushy. Thank you for that. I will also draw your attention to the fact that the 2 men who chopped down the Sycamore Gap tree are being sentenced as we speak. The judge is really, obviously, when they televise these things, you don't get to see the defendants or their reactions, but Daniel Graham and Adam Carruthers are the 2 axe-wielding maniacs, in a tree-chopping sense, I should add. I don't know what they were thinking. They went and felled a tree. Am I right in saying don't be sending these people to jail for cutting? I mean, it's a beautiful tree. I know there was massive significance to the tree. I want them shamed. I want some level of punishment. I want them to realise the awfulness of it, the meanness, the lack of respectness of their ways. I'm looking at a pair of them now on the screen. I mean, this looks like you're never going to see these 2 on Mastermind, I'll tell you that much. Good Lord. But do you go to jail for that? Jail for cutting a tree? Maybe you can educate, maybe you do go to jail, but the judge, she's giving her summing up now. I don't know how long it takes to sum up a couple of blokes that axed down a tree, for God's sake. Get on with it, mate. She's really giving it, they love it, a judge, don't they? You know, you stick a wig on somebody, there you are, Newcastle Crown Court. You've got the eyes of the world, or most of the world, some of the world, looking at you. It's the sycamore tree. I mean, it's a start, you know that someone's going to make a drama of this, aren't they? I hope not, in a way, because you don't want these people to be glorified in any way. Exposed, yeah. But I don't know how... What's the shame... If those two blokes walked into their local pub, what's the sort of shame factor involved in the fact you chopped down a tree? You might have had a few ales, whatever it was you did. You decided that it's a prominent tree, I'm going to cut it down. I mean, what... People are going to call you a half-wit, they're going to call you a bleeping, bleep, bleep, bleep. They're going to do all of that. What'd you do that for, you complete moron? Except, yeah, I shouldn't have done it, mate. You know, it's a silly thing to do. I think they blamed each other, you know, but it is I don't know whether you go to jail for a tree felling, frankly. In the same as you shouldn't go to jail for a tweet. You know, it's in that kind of ballpark. Idiocy, moronic behaviour, offensive, awful, you know, possibly insightful, but chopping down a tree, come on. We've got very few prison places. Carl unless they get sentenced to a tree house, maybe that's where they spend their time. Got to stay up a tree for 3 years. Carl is in Derbyshire. What do you got for us, Carl? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. It's
Hi.
regarding Ed
Miliband.
Braindead, should I say? Yes. And his lack of ability to nail things on the head.
Yep.
Some widely accepted figures regarding CO2. The Earth's atmosphere is made up of 0.04% of CO2, which man is responsible for roughly a third.
Mm-hmm.
And of that third, the UK is responsible for 1%. Now, those are widely accepted figures. You can get them anywhere off the internet on numerous sources. But nobody's ever actually put that, what that figure actually looks like, the 1% of 33% of 0.04%. It actually looks like this, and this is staggering. It's 0.0000132%. So if the UK went beneath the waves tonight, and some in our liberal elite would like that because they don't like us, that's how much we would reduce the CO2 output for the Earth.
Can I give you the
going back to caves?
Can I give you the environmentalist answer to that?
Yeah.
Which is the 0.3%, whatever it was you said.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is crucial. That actually, this world of the tipping point is based on those small numbers. That's what they will tell you. Is that true, or is it hogwash?
Those figures are correct. Their figures are absolutely... They're trying to terrify everybody into hiding behind the sofa because the bogeyman's coming. The Earth has been far hotter and had far higher degrees of CO2 in its existence. The Earth will still exist if the whole of mankind stopped tomorrow.
Yeah, and we'd have hot summers and cold summers and weather would change.
And we've had it for years and years, and we are in a process of flux permanently. It's just that at the moment, man is here to record it, whereas...
and not just record it, but to debate it endlessly and then add hyperbole and all sorts of other mischief on the end of it. Carl, you've been great. Thank you very much indeed for reading out those stats and figures. You want to respond to Carl? Lines are open. I was just talking about the judge who's sentencing Daniel Graham and Adam Carruthers for chopping a tree down. And whenever we have these cases, I sort of live in hope that the judge, when they televise it, and it's down to broadcasters where they televise it, by the way. It's not down to courts to go, we want to expose these people. Broadcasters, the TV cameras are there. A judge can stop a recording if they want to. And I always live in hope that the judge has got like a little earpiece in, listening to us while doing the sentence. You know, like, what's the word? Multitasking. And, you know, you never know. It's possible, isn't it? You think, oh, well, talk radio's on, the home of common sense. I'm a judge. I should half an ear on that. Clearly, the judge was not listening when I said, don't send these two bozos to jail. Daniel Graham, 39, Adam Carruthers, 32, felled a tree. The Sycamore Gap in Northumberland have each been jailed for, are you ready for this, 4 years and 3 months at Newcastle Crown Court. 2 counts of criminal damage. 4 years and 3 months for criminal damage. This is 2 tree care, I'm telling you. 2-tier tree care. 4 years and 3 months for chopping down a tree. It's an act of criminal damage. It's a horrendous thing to do. It's mean. They're a couple of thickos. You wouldn't want to live next door to them. They look like filthy old oiks that couldn't add up straight, sleep straight, or anything else straight for that matter. They chopped a flipping tree down. Prominent tree, beautiful tree. Years and years. I don't know how old this thing was. Many, many decades old. No, it's awful. I hate people like that. 4 years and 3 months in jail. And again, we can make those comparisons. I know it doesn't quite work like this, but it's a very persuasive argument when you think that, I don't know, Hugh Edwards didn't go to jail at all for having a look at looking at child sex assault videos. It's kind of a curious world, and there's loads of comparisons that you can make like that. And we were discussing in the office a little earlier, if I went to my local park or even my neighbour's garden and chopped down a tree, would I go to jail for 4 years and 3 months? Or is it just sort of famous cases or high-profile cases that attract a disproportionality in sentencing? Man, I'm genuinely shocked. We can hardly find prison space for a terrorist, for God's sake. And now 2 fellas with a moody axe have got themselves 4 years for a 4 stretch over there in Her Majesty's or His Majesty's pleasure. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
So the details, by the way, of the tree that's being cut down Apparently it could be around about 300 years old, although the Woodland Trust believe it was between 1860 and 1890. So, you know, let's say 150-year-old, this tree. A moronic mission, it was called. Prosecutors revealed that the pair travelled 40 minutes during a storm, carrying equipment to vandalise the heritage landmark. Evidence included video footage and ANPR data linking Daniel Graham and Adam Carruthers to the crime. The maximum sentence for criminal damage is 10 years, with aggravating factors including harm to heritage and community impact. I'm assuming that would have been a big factor in all of this. And there's no defence of this, by the way. You just know these are genuine horror. I don't know whether they've done time on the inside before. I mean, they look like a pair of chancers, frankly. The gene pool is not going to be any poorer when these two leave it, put it that way. And I know Joel and others have made this point. Thank you, Joel. Says because it's not just any tree, it's a tree of historical national importance. And I do get that. And the act was filmed as well. This is how thick they were. It was filmed, and I think it was found on their phone, wasn't it? They found it literally. I mean, if you're going to do something like that and film it, it is a good idea. Why don't we film it at the same time? It's like, yeah, can you do 2:41 on that ad? Yeah, all right, Dan, I'll film it for 2:41. So they went there at night, probably half cut a tree down, filmed it, and then when the cops turned up, because of the ANPR, clocked their number plate, went round the house, found I mean, you didn't need Columbo to sort this thing. Rumbled and nicked swiftly. 4 years, 3 months. Mark's in Lancashire. I'm stuttering away here because I'm so shocked. Mark, what do you make of this? Good afternoon.
Yeah, it's just yeah. Hello, Ian. Most of the time, I do actually agree with most of the stuff that you're saying. But when you said it's in the same ballpark as the tweet, I've really got to take issue with that, mate. It really isn't.
I'm not saying the crime is. I'm saying I'm talking about jail sentences where you don't necessarily need to send somebody to jail.
Yeah, but I think they do need to go to jail, and I think they should have got the maximum 10 years.
Do you think so?
I don't think 4's enough. Yeah, it's a massive piece of environmental vandalism.
I agree, and it's not nice. I would much rather stick them in a glass box and ferry them around the country and stick them in town centres on a daily basis, so people can go, oh, look at this pair of morons, and kids can come from schools and be shown what a moron looks like.
Sort of when you look at the tree and the importance, people think just a tree. You know, when you say, oh, should you get it for cutting down a tree because it's just a tree? But it's not just a tree. It's a habitat for birds, wildlife. Look at all the people that have sheltered under it over the hundreds of years it's been there, sheltered from the sun, sheltered from the rain. You know, it's more than just a tree. You can't just go cutting them down. I mean, a building, just say if there had been a building in the town and they built and they burnt it down. A building takes like 1 year to replace. That tree, you can't replace that now in my lifetime or your lifetime. Nobody's ever going to see that again. It's gone.
I don't know. If you've been to the Jurassic Park experience, they do quite well.
I think it's really, really upsetting, mate. I was really angry about it when I heard about this.
I agree. I agree with all of that, and I'm not in any way underplaying it. I'm more intrigued about how we use prison in this country. And, of course, I look at how moronic this is. I've always thought there should be a crime of idiocy as well as the specifics of criminal damage. So I'd bolt on maybe another sentencing for that. But we've got no prison places aside from anything else, Mark. What do we do?
Like, we're sending, you know, Lucy Connolly got, 31 months for a tweet?
Yeah.
Well, they've got to get more than that because it's worse. It's a hell of a lot worse. You know, I mean, it's not... You can't just start saying that people don't get punished because we've not got prison places.
No, I don't think that's specifically... I think that's an interesting add-on. You're right. We don't just do it for that, but I do think we need a rethink on how we punish people, and I would include that as well as people who say things on social media into that debate.
Well, yeah, I mean, if there was alternative punishments and they'd bring these two round to my house so that I could whip them with a, you know,
a sycamore branch,
length of barbed wire or something like that, and I'd be quite happy to do so. But you know, in the absence of that, then you know, if the lives are ruined by going to prison, then I'm quite happy with that because they've ruined that environment and ruined enjoyment for hundreds and thousands of people that would have visited that area. I think it's absolutely disgraceful.
Yeah, I'm with you on that point, Mark. Thank you very much indeed. I'm certainly not in any way casual on sentencing. When I look at the fact that right now, across magistrates' courts in this country, not Crown courts, magistrates' courts, there will be people charged with downloading child abuse and viewing child abuse. It's not child porn, it's child abuse of all sorts of natures. Magistrates are not even going to Crown Court and will walk free. And that will be happening. It's probably happened since we've been on air half a dozen times just today. And then you think, how does that work? Now, I don't know whether that's about prison places or something else. I just wonder if there's more effective ways. What we don't want, I agree, well, you're meant to stick an electronic tag around them so they can sit at home, their mate can deliver a bit of gear of an evening and they can sit there smoking big ones and, you know, have a couple of cans at the same time watching Netflix. That's no punishment either. But there's got to be something as effective. This from Andrew, who says, I agree a prison sentence is harsh, but this case is too high profile and the judge has no choice but to make an example to deter copycats. You just know some idiots would use Stonehenge stones for a patio, given half the chance. Wow, that's a great idea, isn't it? Who did your patio? That's just Stonehenge, mate. Sorry? No, it's literally, you know the rocks? Yeah. Chopped up a couple of square meterage, took it. Yeah, you might be right, Andrew. I kind of get it, but I also just think one here comes in. John in Lincolnshire, only crimes of violence and burglary should be in prison, should go to prison by default. Crimes like this should have been 4 years of planting trees. It would free up a lot of space for dangerous criminals and mean community spaces like cemeteries and parks were maintained. That's what I mean. Is there something that is a little more appropriate? Again, I can just keep saying it. It's horrible. It almost epitomises what disrespect looks like. You know, people whose brains are so almost non-existent, whose mindset even goes there. I tell you what we should do. It's midnight. Let's get in the car and go and chop down a very well-known national landmark, a 150, 200-year-old tree. Let's chop it down. I mean, it's horrible, yeah? It says a lot more about the perpetrators than just chopping a tree down. They didn't just nip down to the woods where there's 7,000 trees next to each other, carve their initials and then hack it with an axe. I mean, that wouldn't have been good either. There was something very specific about this, and they thought that this was a good use of their time. For reasons, as far as I can ascertain either, that no one has been able to work out why they did it. But they did it and were traced because the cameras traced them. They just got their number plate, the ANPR, but it was like that quick. And then they returned the next morning and the mobile was traced to phone masts making the same journey, and they went around the house and on the phone was the video of them doing it. I mean, what a pair of absolute, utter thickos. I mean, but also horrible people. What kind of people do, what else do they think about stuff? What are their opinions on? So you can only imagine. So these are, pond life territory. We all know that. 4 years, 3 months in jail, is that about right? Or is that over the top? 0344 499 1000.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is...
It says, good sentence at last. We're getting back on track. And do you know what? What Derek says there, a couple of years ago, I was very much like throw the book at, these crimes that people said were like not really, they're not big crimes, they're not good, but they're not big. I was always the bloke that was on the sidelines going, no, lots of jail, please, because that's the right way. I think now there must be better ways. There's certainly got to be cheaper ways of being able to adequately bestow real justice and exposure, a sense of punishment, a sense of humiliation, all that goes with it. Do you want a sense of rehabilitation? You don't get that from prison these days, it seems. I'm not suggesting either I have the correct answer for what it should be. Your thoughts on that? 0344 499 1000. Let's move to this story, the Hamleys story. This is an absolute beautiful. We love a light story amidst a lot of very dark, challenging news headlines that are out there. And we're going to talk to Hamleys in just a couple of moments on exactly this, because we had a bit of fun with it throughout the course of the show. Let's go to Peter in Bradford before all of that. Peter, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. Great show as always.
Thank you.
I couldn't help noticing a call earlier who was accurate with all his proportions and descriptions of atmosphere and CO2. There was an awful lot of decimal places going on there.
There was a lot. I couldn't keep up.
Yeah.
I tried to write them down, by the way, as he said.
Well, I've got an easy way to explain it for you.
Yeah.
If you can imagine the world's atmosphere as 1,000 pounds, right, as a figure.
Yep.
Then we know that 0.04% of that is CO2. That's 40 quid. We are 1% of the 40 quid, so here we are, 40p.
Yeah.
Now, if you convert those £1,000 into pence, because now we're dealing with pence, that's 100,000 pence is the world's atmosphere, and we're 40p of its contribution of CO2. That shows you the proper proportions of what's going on.
It does. What about the argument then that I mentioned to our previous caller when I've put exactly those kind of figures, not in the brilliant way that you did, by the way, Peter, but a similar scenario. And a scientist or a character in that side of the argument will say, but the 40p is relevant. Because anything over 5p is a danger zone. Over 10p, it's a real problem. Over 20p, it's almost irreversible. When you get to 40p, we're doomed. What do you say to that?
Well, I say to that the world's atmosphere has been 40 quid, 42 quid, 35 quid, and even 70 quid over its history. And the whole thing is proportionate, isn't it? So the point is, if we take our 40p away, and we went to zero, there's still £39.60 worth of people going on with CO2 that we have no control about anyway. So what goes?
Indeed. Well, listen, I mean, food for thought. I know where I sit on this, Peter, and I know where you do as well. I think there's many more people on this, certainly, shall we say, to be generous, questionable side of the argument. That's Peter in Bradford. And that's exactly what happened in Parliament when they were asking Ed Miliband. So you just give us a straight answer, Ed. Just tell us, what is the temperature implications of this? Because you keep telling us about the temperature implications one way. I think it'd be good when there's so much money and change of for industry and expenses, cars, panels, windmills. Man alive, the list goes on. Shall we move to... Let's move to a bit of light relief, and rightly so as well. Hamleys, the world-famous Hamleys, has revealed its top 100 toys of all time in celebration of its 265th anniversary. Wow. Highlighting the toys that have shaped generations. The list includes Barbie, Monopoly, Rubik's Cube, but it's topped, as you might imagine, by Lego. And that's been a game changer over the years, isn't it? From buying a box of Lego, which was just a box of Lego bricks, certainly when I was a kid, to now the themed Lego, which is huge. Let's speak to Karen Dennett, senior buyer for the world-famous Hamleys. Karen, good afternoon to you.
Hello there.
I mean, what kind of job is that you've got? That's an amazing life, isn't it? I just, as I was reading it out, I thought, you buy toys for a living.
I buy toys for a living. How fun.
Yeah.
How fun is
Do you work on is there a criteria? I mean, is there different, do different buyers do different bits, like, you know, I don't know, stuffed toys, electronic toys?
Exactly that. We're all responsible for different divisions. So we have soft toys, you know, action figures, dolls and fashions. So yeah, we all have a little niche as an expertise.
And what's interesting, Hamleys predates many of the toys that are the most famous because you've been around for so long. I should say you were not there at the beginning. I think that would be fair, Karen.
I was not.
But that would be quite something. Well, that'd be a whole different story we'd be discussing. But listen, I mean, this is fun to look at this list, and everybody identifies, I think, with certainly lists of toys. I always say, here we are doing we do a current affairs debate and news, breaking news program every day. But if I want to make my phone lines go absolutely mad, all I've got to do is mention what was your favourite toy as a kid, or your favourite chocolate or something, and everyone has a view.
And this has been one of the funnest probably lists I've ever had to put together, because you literally go down all sorts of memory lanes. Like you say, you think about your own favourite toy, you think about toys that your friends had that you all coveted and that you really wanted. Then you remember your siblings' toys as well that that they used to annoy you with. So it really brings back some real memories from people's childhoods.
It really does. Somebody earlier mentioned Meccano, and I was just thinking, I didn't have Meccano. And when the text came through from the guy that mentioned Meccano, straight away, I was in Paul Ray's house in Ashford in Kent playing Meccano with real envy, because he had this thing called Meccano and he was really good at it, building cranes and all sorts of diggers. You're right, it takes you straight there instantly to somewhere. It's a very good marker of where you were.
Yeah. I was exactly the same, Mr. Frosty. I wasn't allowed one, but my best friend had a Mr. Frosty and I was so envious.
Now you've got me now, because I'm thinking, Mr. Frosty? Who was Mr. Frosty?
It was like a slushy machine. You could make your own slushies.
Your own slushies. Yeah, Mr. Frost, that's it. Because they couldn't call them slush puppies, I suppose. That was probably a copyrighted name, I guess. What's interesting about this, I was delighted to see. Now, the pogo stick is on the list. My little boy got a pogo stick about a year ago. I don't know how we ended up with it. And he spent about 3 hours in the garden and went from being able to do none to doing 1,000, which was quite funny and amusing for us, just looking out the kitchen window watching our kid go mad on a stick in the back garden. But it took him away from screens, and that's what I quite like about this list. There's a purity about this, and it shows that we haven't lost touch with classic games and toys.
No, and I think that's a big element that makes a toy a top toy. Is that whole family play pattern as well. It's a crucial element of what makes a toy, and it reminds you of when you're children, you're playing together as a family. Board games, there's a lot of board games in the list because it harks back to that. All sitting around a table as a family.
And you look at the list, and it helps when you've got kids, of course, but I mean, Connect 4, Hungry Hippos, Operation, all of those we have. I mentioned the pogo stick, Monopoly we have, Rubik's Cube, got a couple of those knocking around, Trivial Pursuit, all of these things. But of course, top of the list is Lego. Are we talking classic Lego bricks, or is it a specific thing, or is it more general, just Lego?
It's just, Lego is definitely a trend that isn't going anywhere, but you're right, there's the classic creator range, which is, your classic box of bricks, which you can't go wrong with, but then there's the other licenses in there that you're seeing phenomenal sales. You've got Spree Champions, we've got, all the Formula One brands in there, and then there's the movie-related ones, there's Minecraft-themed products now, so it really is capturing.
Yeah, we've got shelves of Minecraft Lego at home as well. And of course, it's gone from sort of back in the day when they didn't really do themed sets, or if they did, it was they were very small. It was you bought a box of different sized bricks, you could get a small box, a big box. Now, of course, it's all connected to franchises, everything from the Beatles to Star Wars, right? And you mentioned Minecraft in between.
Yeah. It really is. It's literally if you looked at Lego, there is something for everything in there. They've done a tremendous job of literally covering every personality, and you could find something that suits you that you like.
I did spot one that I think there's a slight gender divide on. I know it's not a popular thing to say in the 21st century, and I'm talking clackers. Are you talking about those two balls on a string?
Yes.
Yeah.
That you always used to hurt your knuckles when you catch
you
them.
take your knuckles off, but they were fun to watch. Now, my sister and all her mates could do that stuff really well. They could make them do things, and I would pick it up, and it was just a knuckle-based disaster, frankly.
I was the same with the yo-yo. I could never do the yo-yo.
No, I still can't. Can you do the Rubik's Cube, though?
Well, the Rubik's Cube, this is one that I definitely remember when I was a child. Me and my brother both got one for Christmas.
Yep.
I couldn't do it. He solved it in minutes, so I ended up just peeling the stickers off and redoing it that way.
Well, Finn, our producer, fessed up earlier that that's exactly what he did, peel the stickers off. But it hasn't got quite the same sort of instant impressive thing to it, has it? You've got to nip off for half an hour and take all the stickers off.
Yeah. Exactly that.
I would imagine, I know you probably can't spill any beans here, Karen, but I know we're in July, but don't tell me that Hamleys haven't had more than one Christmas meeting already, because I know you have.
We have, you're right. We definitely have. In fact, I am this week, as we speak, trying to work on our top toys for Christmas.
Wow.
So, we actually, you know, we do all the toy fairs back in January, February time. That's when we go around, the globe looking for the toys that we think are going to be the hit. So that's when we started looking. It was January.
But some of the classics, you just know that this Christmas there'll be lots of Lego sold. The Lego Empire will be happy. There'll be lots of Barbies sold, because that's back with a vengeance, of course. So a Monopoly will always be there. Operation, as we mentioned, will probably always be there. Are they changing? Are you you obviously can't tell me what, but is there any kind of sort of can you give us a brief glimpse into Christmas 2025? What kind of things are we looking at?
Like you say, there'll be the family games, there'll be the evergreens that everybody expects to be on there. But we have got a few surprises that we hope is going to capture the imagination of all the children out there.
Yeah, I can't wait. And I'll have that moment that still does me in when I walk into Hamleys. I mean, there's many Hamleys now, but I mean the one in London, and I'll see the Christmas lights, and oh boy, I'm straight back there, just everything about it. It's like there's something rather special, a toy store, and a big one at that.
And that's what we want exactly everybody to feel like. You come to Hamleys and everyone's welcome. Everyone just wants to play. That's exactly what we're aiming for.
Yeah. Final question. Do you stock space hoppers?
I'm sure we could find a space hopper.
Yeah, they're still around, I think. They were strange old things as well. It's not quite as big as you remember them, though. When you see one now, you think, wow, I thought they were like massive. It was something the size of, I don't know what, but there we are. Listen, Karen, it's been great having you on. Thank you for your time. Karen Dennett is senior buyer at Hamleys. Thank you to her. And it does bring it back. Yeah, the space, my cousin had a space hopper. We never owned a space hopper, but my cousin did. And I just thought they were a bit weird. And a bit kind of one-trick pony-ish, but still around. They did look big, I remember that. But when you see one, and I think one of my kids' mates had one at some point, and I thought it hadn't been blown up properly, and then I realised, no, that's how big they are. They're tiny in comparison to what you remember. But the big ones are up there. Barbie, Rubik's Cube, Lego are on the list. Beanie Babies, My Little Pony. Oh, God, My Little Pony. Again, I'm going to defer to our Amy. Amy, did you have My Little Pony stuff? She wasn't bothered about, but doesn't like horses, Amy. No, I think she had a scare once. I think that's what it was. My Little Pony, it was always a bit annoying. Tamagotchi, that was big. We mentioned clackers. Slime. Slime. I hate that stuff. My house has been contaminated with so much slime and modelling clay over the years. There's so many types. Trivial Pursuit, the scooter. Yeah, kids and scooters is big business these days as well. That's huge. Sabutio, I'm going to say what I've always said, the most ridiculous football game ever. I don't know how it got on a list. I can't believe it exists. It's almost ridiculous. When I saw the ads on TV as a kid for Sabutio, and then I never got one, but I went to a mate's house who had some, and I did buy a little packet of Chelsea players at the school jumble sale. I've just remembered that. And then I realised to play this thing, you have to flick the player with your finger. It's like, sorry, what? I'm looking ways to plug it in. Where do you put the batteries? No, there's no battery, you flick it. Well, you flick it? What sort of game do you flick a footballer? What am I, a caveman or something? That's the sort of thing you might have done in like the year 1 when you were inventing a game. Oh, you flick stuff. not in the 20th century, or the 21st now. 0344 499 1000. We've had some great response on this. We'll do some more in just a moment right here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 524. Gary makes a good point. He says, I wouldn't be too critical of the judge. This is in the Sycamore Tree case, where they've just been sentenced to 4 years, 3 months. If you think about the maximum sentence for criminal damage, it's 10 years in prison. So how does chopping down this majestic ancient tree rank on the scale of 1 to 10? I'd say at least 4. So they're probably getting an appropriate sentence, yeah. But if you look at it in that way, I suppose we're so used to so many contradictions and almost contradictory sentencing, inconsistent sentencing, that you don't always see it in that way when you consider somebody can get, I don't know, 8 years for murder, and you think, well, not usually for murder, but you can, that does happen with a minimum. You think, but you could get, you know, a judge the other day sentenced someone to 42 years for murder, some 50 odd years. So the disparity, I know you can look at gradients of severity and all the rest of it. Let's get a quick word from Rob in Putney. Rob, what have you got? We've not got long, Rob, but I'm sure you can do it. Good afternoon.
Yeah, very quickly. I used to be a sceptic on the whole environmental thing. It's the concentration. It's the rate of change of concentration.
Okay.
CO2 in the atmosphere is 424 parts per million.
Yep.
150 years ago, pre-industrial, it was 280. So it's gone up basically 1 point per million per year on average, but historically it goes up 1 point per million every century. So it's increasing at 100 times the rate it would normally increase. And
that's only down to man-made components.
It's been higher before, but 3 million years ago when there were no humans on the planet. Basically it's deforestation and fossil fuels. So you pump them into the atmosphere and the planet holds the heat. when it used to go at one part per million every 100 years, the planet can adapt slowly. The ecosystem can cope with small changes over a long period of time. But if you accelerate it massively, you can't cope.
There's the problem. Got it. Rob, I know we were short and sweet, but thank you very much for that. I did ask for a counter response to some of the calls we've had, and that was Rob putting forward what he would call the scientific
What's with
thing.
the hands?
It's the hands.
What's going on?
Do you remember Magnus Pike?
Magnus Pike, yes!
The TV science guy.
Could I apologise about yesterday? Did you hear what happened yesterday?
Yeah, you couldn't be asked to come to work.
No, I got to Woking. I'm going to share this with you, and I'm going to offer genuinely, this is true. Finn, listen to me. Get to Woking.
Yep.
Tannoy, you got to get off. We get off. There's no trains anywhere now on south going in or out of London because the signal box at Woking, something's happened to it. Now, in the middle of a frigging heat wave, what do you think was South West Trains' excuse genuinely for that? They had a rain shower and it got flooded. And I'm not even... There was a rain shower somewhere in Woking and apparently the entire signal box was buggered. So I thought to myself, Peter Carville so loves doing drive time.
He does.
So I went home, but it took me 8 hours and all I did was make it to Woking. So I was steaming when I got home.
And you're doing train journey nightmares after 4 o'clock?
I am doing... No, I'm not doing that. I'm doing loads of stuff. What is the big story? The universal credits, the huge blunder by the Ministry of Defence, or the fact that the BBC should be completely and utterly sacked and net zero is a crock of rubbish?
Shizzle. Big story, toys.
What toys?
Toys. Hamleys' big list of the most popular toys.
For Christmas?
No, generally, in their 265-year history.
What is the most famous toy?
Lego.
Lego
is the favourite.
I read an article the other day that people are stopping drinking, your age group, and they're going and making Lego, boring people.
Really?
I'm glad